Ah, c'est bon. Non, ouais.
Après ça, on est revenu. Il y avait quelqu'un en discussion?
Il n'y a plus personne. personne en ligne là. Il y a
Yana qui est venue. Yana Genova.
Yana Genova qui est en ligne, ouais.
Ah, ok.
Tu peux lui parler d'ailleurs, on t'entend.
Yana.
Hello.
Hi, Yana. It's Lisa. How are you?
Hi.
I'm sorry we are late. We're trying to bring them in, conferences and meetings.
No, it's okay. I will switch off the. I will wait. Just be silently present if you don't mind.
Je mettais un chronomètre, c'est ça alors. Il reste une minute. Tac, 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 Alors, Alexandra? Oui, elle est. Non, je pensais que c'était
Il est 14h30.
Alors, 1h. So 14h30. We've got 1 hour divided in 10 minutes. And Pilar will be talking about the critical focus on contemporary Arabic literature in English and other European languages. And then we'll be discussing the latest selection, like the new selection, and yeah, we'll see. I mean, I'm not going to tell you.
What I mean is if it's fine with Gareth, because we try to have the whole afternoon to have an exchange with Gareth. So Gareth, if it's fine with you, we take 1 hour to wrap up the things that we didn't say, and we close every topic, like Pilar after 10 minutes, the topic selection after 20 minutes, the topic Marcia's papers at 15, and the topic scouting on the website, Polish, Norwegian after 15.
Where have yeah, good evening. I'm sorry because after lunch I know it's a little bit difficult, but I only want to, give you a few links and information about the situation of Arabic literature and translation and houses publishing everything in Spain, okay? Then I know more the academical part, but anyway, because they are, all of them, when you do like Richard show us, when you do an academical list or, you know, or repository of all this information, of course, you are in connection with the others' experience or situation, okay? Then I will show you very quickly that we have, first of all, Banipal in Spanish. Banipal, you know, is a review, Arabic modern literature, okay? They have more than 20 years. Stephen knows very well the directors and everything. And in Spain, it's a new initiative, okay? I think it's going very, you know, very good because we don't have a lot, like we show, Italian, German, everything. Then, of course, it's a classical style, the presentation, but now it's more and more actual. Even they include picture or from painters, Arabic painter. They have another arts around. But specifically it's about literature, and also I have to tell that it's not the same that the Banipal in England, okay? It's a Spanish version of Banipal that is in considering more the reality of Spain. That of course we have more Moroccan and Algerian writers, you know, and Tunisian, not only in the Middle East. And also I think the good thing that Banipal Connect, that sometimes is very strange because right from the other part, we start to be in contact of the academical teacher who translate, literature, because some of us they translate thought or history or archaeology or whatever, you know. And then because we are in the same, you know, review from outside, maybe now we talk more because we have to. They have a committee of the review, the revisions. One I know more, you know, few all of them, but they have people that is at the confidence of Samuel, because he's writer also and everything. For example, Ahmed Al-Yameni, that he's writer, that he knows very well Spanish. But they have a very special right hand. It's Ja'far Al-Luni. It's a nephew, a nieto of Adonis. He's very young, very active. He reviews everything. You know, I trust him even he's young. For example, my last translation in Banipal was about a Sudanese writer, Stella Gitani, that she's a very feminist, very, you know, special woman. And he writes in Arabic in Sudan still. Then, of course, I had a lot of difficulties because some of the words, I don't know these words in Arabic because it's a reality of a plant in Sudan, or kind of, I don't know, construction or whatever. Then he was helping me. He's also a research translator. Then I think it's okay. Then we have the Escuela de Traductores. We have a specific translation school. Okay, before it was independent. I will see. I will. Sorry. Escuela. I will. Okay. Now I come.
Yeah.
Okay. Escuela de Traductores. Okay. And in the Escuela de Traductores. Sorry for the hurry. Escuela de. ¡Hala! Es verdad. Ay, keywords. Estos franceses.
We give you 30 seconds more.
Does anyone want to donate 30 seconds of their time?
I go. Escuela de Traductores, ¿ok? Escuela de Traductores. no sé dónde está aquí, en la
Toledo.
Toledo, sí.
No,
This is not there.
Yeah, right.
Te doy el
Toledo.
The second one, no?
Escuelas de traductores en
Ah, it's Wikipedia, sorry.
I have in my computer, no.
Lo digo, el de la
Sí.
es traductores.orex.es. Ponla arriba directamente, porque así te sale la
Vale.
base directamente.
Vale,
la textual.
vale, perdón. Vale. Voy. A ver, escuela de ¿cómo me has dicho?
Traductores.orex.
Vale.
It's not.
Será.
I know, it's Lilo again.
Try
It's not Google.
Try Google.
No, ponla ahí directamente. Traductores.orex con X.
Punto, hay el punto, me cago en la
I think it's.
Orex.
Punto es.
Changer clavier, c'est
Punto.
Much other shopping also.
Okay, here they have they had before and continue with different edition a research project. Okay, then they have this repository. And you can write down the author or the title, and this is a Mediterranean repository. You have also in Hebrew, Arabic, yeah, but to the different places in the Mediterranean area. Then you have Tarjamet. I know I have there the link in Facebook that they have a small video, 2 minutes video. They explain how to look for. Okay.
Search for.
Yeah. 1 minute.
Yeah.
Okay. And also in this Escuela de Traductores, you have when you look for investigation, I send everything to Lucia.
Okay.
Then and you have another research, a project with a repository, an article about who is translated from the Arabic into Spanish.
Okay.
Okay, and I think the right reference.
It's also Toledo School.
Yeah, because Toledo School now is connected, now is belong and is the part of Universidad de Castilla-La Mancha. And one person that I appreciate a lot, and I think is very good connection, not only her husband, that is Luis Miguel Cañada, because also he knows a lot about the publishing houses that now is publishing about the Arabic into Spanish and everything. And also his wife, María Jesús Comendador, because she's the right person, because she is the bibliotecary person in the Escuela de Traductores. And yeah, in the library, yeah. And she's also connecting with this project. Then she knows how to connect to a platform, to the all the libraries and everything. That for you.
Send me the other links, and then also maybe if she's a resource person like that, then maybe we can ask you then to have a review the study about Spanish language in our updated studies on the
Also, I have already the article with the translation and everything, because when you know the person who are working on the Bashir is in one of the projects also with them, that a young person.
Bashir.
Okay.
Okay.
Then, and also the Casa Árabe did before small books about what is publishing about Arab world, and also what is translated. And one of them, if I don't, Pedro remember maybe better, was about Arabic literature.
Great. Okay.
Completely, you have a lot. It's only to connect.
Send the links there we go.
Yeah, I think it's only to connect and to update. And
I think it was for free.
Yeah,
because it's an academical public
it's a
project.
Like, I think I have the 3 of them in PDF. I can send you, but if not, you have in issues type of magazine. But like that, you can.
Yeah,
I didn't know I could. lexical effect.
Oh.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Mira. Me voy, ¿eh? Y de investigación, grupos, ¿no? No, en investigación. Publicaciones. You have everything, you know? When you look in the, okay?
Okay. Well, the website is very cool. It's very nice.
Yeah. Yeah.
Very pleasant. Okay, so now moving on to Jen is going to talk about the selection, which is the big topic of the residency.
Yes, so I will just present in 1 minute, no, because it's 1 minute to tell you what came out of all the, so that now we have a collective discussion about it. So when we were in Arles, as I said yesterday, at the translators residency, we thought, I have to remind that we have this budget issue, that we didn't think in the whole budget about paying people in a jury to be doing the whole work of like producing the catalog. We just had like the item, the web designer and the graphic designer for the print issue and the samples of translation. Like there was a gap about how do we pay the whole process. So our first like good idea at the translators residency was that since there are a lot of lists out there that we will link to on the website and all that, then why not have as a specificity of our selection to have the translators and this collective of the young scene of translators, etc., doing the catalog. And then it appeared to be a problem to see it like that. First, because as LEILA, we do have certain needs, like we want a certain representativity of what we are featuring, etc., as a selection, and we cannot give them a free carte blanche to do a selection. Also, they are kind of not very precise group of persons, since it's the translators who were in the residency, plus their friends and colleagues, etc. So we don't also have an overview of the editorial board. Plus there was the problem of not being in dialogue with the Arab experts to establish a selection or a list, which was one of the objectives of LEILA. So rethinking it and hearing all of you and the importance also of coming up with lists, with authors, with this kind of info before LEILA 2 and the bigger, ambitious database, etc. We have now a proposition that holds in 3 items, and that which we discuss right now. So the idea is that after all the talks of yesterday, we would ask the translators, this kind of new scene of translators that we want to empower in their scouting, in their work of scouting, which they do and they're rarely paid for. And they also say that if they work on it collectively, they will be stronger pitching titles to publishers if it's the outcome of a collective list, etc. So we would ask these translators, you have a carte blanche and you make us the catalog of the highbrow, elitist, like very scouting, never translated titles. And we'll discuss with them if 30 titles maybe seems an idea. And they will be paid to do samples of translation. Like then we would precise all this with them, but this group of translators, we would put in charge of this catalog. And then, sorry, and then we have the 15 minutes left to discuss it. And then a second thing, like really maybe the column vertebrale, the backbone of it would be to have, to establish a committee, a Euro-Arab committee of an even number, how do you say nombre de pair? An even number, maybe 8, 10 or 12 of Europeans and Arabs, a kind of committee like that. The Europeans would all represent a different language, and we would have the same number of Arabs for the discussions, etc. And this would be an authors-based approach. And they would propose, we didn't, Richard said yesterday, maybe 100 would be a big number, maybe it could be closer to 60, maybe we don't have to say how many it will be from the beginning, but just let them start to like get together somewhere between 50 and 100, and to make a list of authors on a subjective LEILA approach that would be, we wanted to fill the gap of like the voices that don't come to the European market and that are good books. And they can be commercial, they don't have to be like the indie selection and all that. They can be like à l'eau de rose, they can be detectives, they can be like whatever, but like representative of good books, and it will be their decision, like what are good authors, etc. Sorry, this would be not good books, but good authors, like and important authors, etc. And then when I asked Richard, but it means that on these names you would have to have Alal, Ashwani, Ramizi, like a lot of names would be. And he said, no, in the contrary, because LEILA is linking to a lot of existing selections where all these people are out there and everybody knows them, etc. Our entry would be the others that are not yet, even if they are already translated in 2-3 countries, they are not yet like having the reception that they deserve, and they are not yet known by all the other languages, etc. So this would be the authors-based approach. And then we suggest that we could have a third item that would be again a title-based selection that would be a list of unforgivables, and that would really target the markets in Europe where some, like Samsa yesterday said, Tayyip Saleh, for instance, like the titles that cannot not be translated into a language or something like that. So this is kind of what we think we can start and do with LEILA 1, so that even seeing how it works and how it works with publishers, what's the reception, and all this would help us then on LEILA 2, like how we continue with the selection, or do we turn to our publishers who send their propositions, etc. This is how we would start an experiment. Sorry, I spoke too long because now we want your feedback and to discuss it.
So, I mean, for me to understand, so you want to propose like the essentials that they already not translated to, you say European language, but the 4 main languages you will work in LEILA 1 will be French, German, not, or you're
no, sorry,
to...
no, sorry, maybe it wasn't clear. No, I'm just saying that there is a difference between some markets where the essentials are already there and some where they are not. So it's only that to have a specific list and entry for the markets where very few words are translated and very important words are not translated, we would have one item that would be a kind of list of unforgivable titles. You know,
where
to catch
if
up.
I'm in Spain, I will go and see if there is any for
Yes,
Spanish,
maybe there will be one lacking in Spanish, maybe there will also be one lacking in French, who knows, you know what I mean? But a kind of list of unforgivable titles, something like that.
Just a note, unforgivable has a negative connotation. You might want to change it to essential.
Essential.
No, I mean, I'm just.
Isn't
Yes.
it unforgivable?
It was the translators in R who called it the unforgivable.
Yeah,
But yes,
but I mean, it has a
essential.
negative connotation, so you want to.
Yes.
But you don't want to keep any, you don't want to guilt trip.
Yes,
Exactly.
the new ones are like essential.
Sorry,
Exactly.
Means that the new ones are like essential.
Okay, so something that's not negative.
and for Spain, you
but-
want, because,
Like Penguin
I
Classics.
mean,
Marsha has
There
something called
to,
translate this.
for
I mean,
official
you know,
languages.
I don't know, must have.
Yeah.
Spain
must
will
have.
have 4
Nice
official
to have.
languages.
Yes.
So you want us to track also
Yeah.
the things that have been
Yeah.
translated to
Yeah.
Catalan,
Yes, this is one of the questions. Should we, on this list of titles, specify all the languages that it has already been translated to? Yes, maybe this is something we
I think for Spain,
Yeah.
And the
it is just
observatory,
absolutely necessary.
yes.
Yeah.
in the observatory of translation, they consider the problems.
Okay.
They are audiences of misunderstanding.
For us.
Yes.
And publishers are often will follow what others do, so if they look and they see, oh, it's been translated into German or Italian or whatever, then they'll say, oh, well then, I'll do it
Yes.
too. There's an
Exactly.
effect.
Or maybe if it's translated to a different language, he can actually read it in this other language.
True.
Yes, as well.
So if he wants to translate it into French, but he knows German, he can read it in
Yeah, but
German.
for example, we translate a novel from Palestinian author from Arabic to Spanish. And then another organization, they took our
Spanish
translation and they translated to Valencian, from Valencia, which nearly Catalan. And that's an issue. I mean, we fight because we say, no, you have to translate it directly from Arabic.
But you can.
Even
It's an
if
issue, but it's not an issue for data. I mean, it's,
No,
we
but-
cannot have
no,
control on this kind of.
But you will still list double translations?
Sorry?
Yes,
If we should mention that it has been,
Yeah.
it's a question that Elisabetta had before, and I think we have to be
We
aware of
can't
it.
deal with this
And we
kind of
cannot
thing.
really deal
Yeah.
with it, like, should we
Why not?
say it has, should we not say it has been translated to Italian if the translation is bad. I don't think so. You know what I mean? Like there are things that it's not our fault. We give objective.
You're providing the
info.
information.
And
But
yes.
my question is, if we're going to have a filter about bad translation or something very basic, if it's not or directly translated from the original language, from Arabic in this case, should it be listed in whatever this LEILA project?
No, we can just put a mention, like it was interesting to see before the mention on LitProm's website, we don't take manuscripts and we maybe sometimes have to put some mentions on our pages, etc. to say, here we say in what languages it has been translated. It doesn't mean that we encourage you to go read it or that we value these translations. It's just an information.
This would be like we say it's a bad translation.
No, actually, generally speaking, to explain what kind of tool it is, it is that we say in what languages it has been translated.
I think it's important to hear about this question, the answer about.
Yes.
No, I think that I catch what Pedro wanted to say. For instance, in my database, I write a translation from the English translation. So it's not the translation made directly from Arabic, but
it can be mentioned.
I mentioned
Translation from Spanish
For
into
instance,
Valencian.
for instance, half of Naguib Mahfouz in Italian was translated through English because the American University in Cairo sent the right, sold the right to the Italian publishing house without saying, go from the original, this is the English. So they translate from English. And you notice it because it's not Midan Tahrir, it's square, Tahrir square. Why? Why?
Yeah.
No? It's
Yes, so this we can mention like
So-
that.
you can mention it in the translation.
Just one thing to be aware of, like, if you imagine you have a book and you have like 350 pages and each page is a different work and you're like, oh, on page 56, I want to add a little note here saying it's a bad translation, and on page 34, I want to add something saying it was actually translated from English. Like you can do that in a book, but when we're talking about a database, you just need to be aware that we're adding like an extra field. It's like having a spreadsheet. It's like having a spreadsheet.
Yes.
You need to be aware that it's like adding an extra column. So this is something we'll be adding for all the data, for all the books. So we need to be aware that there will be a column which is not translated from the original Arabic, and there will be a column which will be something like quality of translation, or there will be a column saying.
How about those notes?
Yeah.
I mean, it could be notes.
It could be notes.
So it could be.
Yeah.
I mean, if
Or comments or whatever.
it could even be in the description. If because each book will have a description. If you just want it to be generic, you have a description of the work, and then at the end you just do another paragraph and you say notes about the translation.
Yes.
And you can add it there.
Okay.
That's okay.
Translator was never.
Sorry,
clear.
may I ask a question, please?
Yes.
Yes, when we're making a list of the essentials, this is what we're talking about. And we're mentioning that that this title has been translated to French, English, and German. We're not we're not making a database of each book with its bibliographical reference, etc. We're making like in a catalog when you say that rights have been bought in France, Britain, and Germany, which means that we don't have to get into all these details. Our aim is to give information to European publishers who want to choose titles. So then the publisher, when he's interested in an author and a title, he goes and sees the details of the thing, but you don't have to say, or you're going to put the whole bibliographical reference, and then you don't need to, you will have to say, translated from the English by X, and the English was translated from the Arabic by Y. So you'll have the two names of the translators, but this is not the database we're doing. We're doing a list of books that haven't been translated, that should be translated into all languages from the Arabic, which are essentials. And then the publishers do their homework as well and go see what's there and if it was direct or indirect or whatever. It's not our, there are limits of what we should be doing and what is not of our business, I think.
Yes, maybe translators essential, but it can be an incitement for publishers to see that it has been translated into 6 or 8 languages. And I think this maybe is an information that we could put, especially if it's.
Yes, the information that it has been translated in these 3 or 4 languages, but then the detail, because am I aiming to let the translator, the publisher in Spain, be interested in a title which was already translated into Spanish because it was indirect? This is very specific, and this is, yeah, we shouldn't get into this kind of details, I think. We just say that it has been translated this and this and that. And then if it is a very important title, the publisher will see if it is still in print or not, if it has sold or not. And then it deserves another translation, I think.
Okay. We need a title because they change really often.
So what's
Some books are.
Can I also join here if? Hello.
Hi, Anna.
Hello.
Hi. Yeah, hello everyone. Sorry, I'm joining only today, but nice to see you virtually. I'm Jana Genova from Next Page Foundation.
Next Page Foundation
in Sofia.
And also working close together with the collège des traducteurs. Okay, go.
Yeah, I see some familiar faces, so hello. Familiar names, Richard. Pedro, I don't see, but anyway, I just wanted to follow up on what Samara Bozar just said. It indeed, and also speaking from experience, if the targets are the European publishers, then perhaps it's going into these details whether a particular translation was mediated through another language is because they're gonna use these other translations perhaps as reading, as references to read them. So for them, it doesn't matter whether the translation was mediated or direct. And then because Samar mentioned rights both, I guess, sorry if you have discussed this already, but when you're making a database of this kind, you cannot possibly know which rights were already sold. So we are rather talking about publications, right? We can only know, I'm speaking from, there is this European Union Literature Prize, and they try to follow in which languages the award winners have sold rights, and this is very difficult. They have this very ambitious on their website, and they ambitiously said rights sold in this and this and that country, but actually the database is very, very incomplete. So my general message would be, let's go for the minimum, and also very often you cannot possibly say from certain bibliographies, national bibliographies, you can't possibly say whether the translation was direct or mediated. Sometimes it doesn't say in the book even. So
I agree with you about the rights. I was giving the catalogs as an example to say that we don't need to get into the details, but just say published in this and this language. We're not mentioning rights. It was an example. Sorry.
I think, yeah, Gareth had a technical feedback on the message.
It's gone.
Gareth,
Okay, so we have to switch to the other subjects so that we're sure that we'll at least mention everything. On this one, I just want to say that I thought that we would go to more general questions like, do you think you're okay with these 3 items that we're proposing now? Does it make sense? And another question would have been, is it the same board or committee that would select the authors and the essentials, or should it be 2 different kind of boards, and should it be them doing the homework of the notices of the book, or should it be the LEILA team? I mean, if you have anything coming, or we will brainstorm it later, but I thought we would discuss about this kind of issues as well. We can keep it for later, like we will brainstorm it alone and get back to you to ask you. But I don't know if you have comments coming like
I
that.
have a comment. Okay,
Yes.
for the first list done by the translators, you said that it would be book author based and
No, titles. The translators in the list, etc., it would be titles based with translation samples.
okay.
And
So
it would be titles not translated.
yes,
not yet translated.
never been translated. But then the unforgettables or the essentials, it's like the books that can't not be translated
Yes.
into any language. So I think there at some point there would be an overlap between both lists. Like there would be like a great book that had never been translated and cannot not be translated.
I don't think so, because we're speaking about essentials that are they are already translated even if in one language only, but I think we have in mind essential titles even from living authors on the 30 last years. I don't think that you think that essentials have been missed by any translation.
I mean, of course, there would be like essentials that haven't been translated.
In any language, definitely.
Yes, I'm sure there is.
Essentials in the book market as well, not essentials to hard.
No, I mean essentials like great authors and books that were really good, representing their communities in a way that hasn't been represented before. I mean, there must be a way for books to show up in both lists. In this sense, I don't see why like translators, and this is just my comment, like for the second committee, the unforgettables, if you want to have like a board of authors or other people who are working on it, of course, there will always be an input coming from the translators who have something to contribute to this list as well. So it can be, it can be a hybrid list, a hybrid board of authors and translators.
Yes, I think so. Why did you mention authors? I don't think you think authors should be on the.
I mean, whoever is in the board. I mean, like translators and other people.
Yes.
Like people. Let's keep it. So it can be like translators can contribute to the first list that they are creating, but they can also be contributing to the other list made by the aliens because they have things to say here.
Yes, yes, that's right.
And here ends 20-minute discussion about this selection. If you have anything to say, we can come back to that later this afternoon. So now we've got the introduction by Ms. Jen about the contents that are already commissioned by LEILA in the framework of the research grants.
Yes, and this I mentioned it many times, so I'll say it quickly and give you, Colleen, to present Marshall's studies.
Okay.
So something that I mentioned many times and with Richard also this morning is that a part of LEILA's budget, and we applied to a grant by Annalyn Foundation end of 2020 that was about an open call for applications to produce intercultural research or studies. So we thought we'll apply to this and try to have covered a part of LEILA's project that is producing some research and contents, etc. So we work on this iReMMO with Literature Across Frontiers, with our Blitz, it has to be North-South partners, and with Darek Tanwir in Egypt. So without going to the whole story, we decided to produce like on the one hand updates on the Annalyn mapping of 2010, 11, etc. for 10 European countries. I have the list here: Czech Republic, Netherlands, United Kingdom and Ireland, Finland, France, and Wallonie. I mean, it's per language. Austria, Germany, Switzerland for German language, Greek, Italian, Polish, Spanish, and co-official languages of Spain. So these are the 10 updates of the Annalyn studies that we commissioned. Alexandra from Literature Across Frontiers is following up. Richard did the French one. It's the only one written in French. We'll have it translated in English. All the others are in English. And we'll try to see a committee of reviewing by the peers to make sure about the quality as well. This is one thing. And then the other studies, it's about the Arab book market. And it's of two kinds. We said we would produce contents about the Arab book market itself, because there are no statistics, data, etc. And we'll find a great way to produce data, etc., which we failed at trying to do because of the time, the unavailability of data, the not finding the exact right person. And at the same time, we're lucky to hear, like 1 week ago, thanks to Samar, that the Art Publishers Union worked on such a study that has been published 3 days ago, I think 230 pages in Arabic, that we will ask all of you to look at and all that, and to tell us if it's how you see it and all that, to see if they didn't plan on translating it into English, then maybe we would cover like finances translation into English and feature it. And it also brings another question on our website that be the translation of this study or not, we think that when we will switch to which sections, what kind of info to have on the website, we should have some info on the Arab book market. So also we won't have time to cover everything like in this workshop, but we're thinking like some very important studies, articles, monographies, publishing perspectives is something, for instance, right now during Abu Dhabi Book Fair with interesting interviews. I mean, Samar Abu Zaid did for Frankfurt Book Fair in 2013-14, some really interesting papers also covering issues such as piracy, censorship, like that are still issues. So how can we cover like giving info to the publishers about the Arab market? Should we link to book fairs, etc.? So these are all questions in our minds for the website regarding the Arab book market. And then finally on the Arabic literary creation, we commissioned Marcia Links again, our source, Marcia, we commissioned her to write 7 or 8 papers that are transverse studies on transverse in opposition, as it's not country studies, it's transverse studies on Arabic language creation. I don't have a list here, I don't know if Anne has it. I know by heart that we have Arabic detective novel, we have children's literature, we have historical fiction, we have the new ways of writing of the like the personal narratives, etc. These are those that they send us until now. So I don't have the others in mind. But what is important is that it's like really great stuff. And she also made some links to some lists or to some articles, etc. inside the articles. So, and I'm happy that Colleen, who's also a scholar and very knowledgeable about it all, when I sent it to her for the purpose of this workshop, was like, oh, this is brilliant stuff that we have. So maybe this is a way now, Colleen will present it, to see that if our aim is like simplicity and LEILA producing content and info and all that, maybe we should find a way to really put this series of articles as a kind of entrance portal or whatsoever in the website for a publisher who wants to explore what is created today, written in Arabic, etc. Because each article then opens you the door to the whole genre or whatsoever. So I let Colleen present it.
So yeah, basically like every single article is very detailed and very long. So and my role here is not to summarize them. It's not the objective, but I will, like they will be, when they're approved, they will be sent to you, you can actually read them. But the idea again was to stress how important it was to have like a genre approach, because that's something Arabic literature has been suffering of a lack, from a lack of. So again, it was like very interesting cross-country perspective. So 4 examples here. Like the rather different, so I might just go through all of them, but again, it's very much of a historical overview here in the case of historical novels. And yeah, it would just like, draw, like take examples from like different books from different eras and countries, trying to like, come up with like particular angles, such as in the case of history, for instance, the case of enslaved Africans and Arabs of sub-Saharan origin. There's the question of religious communities in historical novels with, again, different examples. And queer and creative histories, then like a cross-subject perspective about when historical novels meet genre literature such as fantasy or horror. So we do have, that's also something, because some people would say, but like such books do not exist in the art world, but this is proof that actually they do, even though you don't have a lot of them, we still have anyways, and then eventually this idea of shared histories and historical fiction in dialogue with Europe. So as you can see, it's a very subjective approach, obviously, to historical novels, but she shows based on her experience, based on the examples, she chose different angles also, which might definitely influence and nourish the critical thinking of publishers in Europe. And eventually, she came up with suggestion of places to start, kind of a ready-made selection of books from different countries. So that's the first example. Second one is reports about memoir and creative non-fiction. So again, definition of the term, the question of food and family. Again, examples, satire and sarcasm, true stories of murder and mystery, genre blending. She always has this approach of kind of winding up her perspectives and trying, not to put things in boxes. It's very frustrating, sorry, for me just to scroll, because definitely you will be interested to actually read them. So I'm not going to, just see travel tales and then literary testimonials. And again, this is 10 books to discover, and also this is a very welcome addition for that one, that particular paper, which are the 5 publishers with an interest in literary non-fiction. So it's just also beyond the book. It's about looking at the ecosystem of Arabic literature in the Arab world. And again, example here. In that paper, which is about Arabic detective novel, she would each angle actually is about a particular country or sub-region. So the first one being about Egypt, Lebanon, Palestine, Northern Africa, and then detective novels and young readers, and eventually.
Could you please share the screen? I'm sorry to interrupt. Is it possible to share the screen?
Of course, just bear with me a minute. I'm not going to do it again, but the articles will be sent to you at some point when they've been approved, so you can read them. So basically, you're just scrolling down. And the last example being, as Christine was mentioning, the boom in Arabic children's literature. So here it's more of an overview of, a historical overview of the dynamics pertaining to children's books. So how, it started in Lebanon mainly, the trends and authors. What are the new changing focus, particularly with the rise of books for adolescents and young adults. I knew that's something, having been to the Sharjah book fair a couple of years ago, I knew there was a big thing, the young adult genre. And eventually illustrators, prizes the ones that we were discussing, the issue of discriminability. And again, she comes up with a much larger list of the 25 books to fall in love with. So from different countries.
But who is the author of this?
Marsha.
But because this is a specific bibliography, because we have a lot of articles from the academical staff about this thing,
Yeah.
Okay. And we have access to the read. Okay.
Yeah.
And they publish in the academical review or wherever.
No, it's what I explained just before. It's we, LEILA, commissioned them from Marsha for our needs for LEILA website. So this is customized for us. And by the way, for now, those that she's sending, because we still don't have the whole series, me, I'm in charge of coordinating this part with her. So for now, I did it with Richard, and I also sent the detective for the detective Arabic, the crime novel, and I also sent it to Mohammed Rabia. But they just said, it's really great stuff. But I mean, we can also if some of you are telling us, I would be interested to read on this and to comment on it, then also you can. I mean, she would be very happy, Marsha, to have any kind of feedback of those who know, either to add things, etc. For us and LEILA, wait until we have them all and maybe also your feedback to ask her maybe what kind of list or links we want at the end to wrap up, like, to prepare the explanation for the European publishers. She tried to do it here, but on this thing would be maybe more specific. She made propositions, but we'd be happy to be able to share it.
You can ask her for the historical novel.
Yes, of course. And then if you have any kind of comments, you can also give it directly to her. She would be happy. You asked me, yes. So I don't know what you think.
Or your secretary or your undersecretary.
I remember that the College de Toledo made a little book
Yes.
on historical novel.
But exactly, if Toledo made one on historical novel, then maybe we should link it at the end of Marcia's article. This would also be the
I
idea.
remember that there was a book, a little book of the Escuela College de Toledo on the historical novel.
I know.
So,
But so then maybe we should link, maybe then we should decide at the end of each of her papers is to link to other contents.
For this
about
I
the
was
same thing,
thinking,
this kind of.
And also the map, they have a project, Petra, and it's a map with the translation of the Arabic also. Have a map also, it's a project that they call, the acronym is Petra. Maybe you have to
Coordinate.
to check with the Annalyn map.
Who did the map?
Petra is a platform, and they have a map about the translation.
Petra.
Yeah.
It's a European project,
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah.
Yes, but I don't think it's any kind of exhaustive, or I don't know what, it's very.
The mapping.
The
mapping also this.
Who is doing this?
It's a European project, and I know, for example, Castilla-La Mancha University was involved.
But it's closed now, the project, so they're not producing.
Petra, yes, but they have from this project, I think, I'm not sure that it's closed, but they have researchers and different person that they continued with thesis and with another small project, the national project. With
I think
yeah, and I think Petra is
Fondazione San Pellegrino.
Okay, we'll check it.
Petra maybe, I'm not sure.
Research when we applied to the European fund, I ran into it and I had the impression that it was closed or that it was also very much academia and schools and all that. But
yeah, maybe
we'll go
yes,
and look
maybe
at the
yes.
map and see if it's more information than what we have until now. But then yes, it's a great idea what you say. If Toledo did the same kind of article, then to also link to others of this kind. Like now we commissioned it from LEILA, so from Marcia, so it's LEILA's thing, but of course we always want to bring the information that is there. So this is also.
Shall I take the last 10 minutes to talk about the
Like
existing websites promoting national literature?
Yeah, this
which
is
might
what
be a
we
good transition.
Can I just ask a question about like this content we're talking about integrating? Are we talking about integrating it as like a PDF you can download, or as in an article that will be typed into the website?
I don't know, we would like to have it like big, you know what I mean, like as an introduction to our.
So it's in the same way that there's content maybe about like the European book market or something. It would be an article.
No, I think it should be a kind of narrative of like the website owners, you know what I mean, like as LEILA's selections, that it's somehow visible what we are when we're talking to the reader.
It would be a page.
One page per item.
One page per item.
Yeah.
With like a title and then like a paragraph.
Yeah.
Just a page, because like
Yes.
a narrative is a great idea, but it's not.
No, I mean, in the same tone or voice as when we're doing introduction to some resources that we have, that this is the LEILA voice.
The idea is that the catalog will say a title, and the title will go in one of these genres.
The titles in the article?
No, for the translators that do the list of the title of the catalog.
Yes.
And this title is linked to these articles or not?
If there is a link between the selections and the contents of the articles.
So I propose.
Yes, this is the embryo of the database. Know that if we have cross-references, like in
So-
an article, there is a work that is
Now, what I mean is,
featured in the
if
selection.
we have an article on the backpage stories,
Yes,
and then the selection of LEILA, there is no one detective story. What does it mean?
Claro.
but there will be detective novels in our No, I'm not sure I understand, but of course you're right that we should start and establish like our database somehow. That if in the selection there is a title that is in
No,
the articles, there is a.
I think that the articles
Yeah.
must be the source of the catalog.
Yes,
So the books of the catalogs has to match with the
yes.
articles.
Yes, I understand. So maybe once we have the catalogs and selections, we can also ask Marcia to somehow go
Yes,
and
or
integrate more.
or to say to the translators, they choose the articles, they choose the titles, to have in mind
Yes, to read the articles as also a source
and
of.
have the categories.
Yes,
Because otherwise,
the categories of it. That's right. If we, yes,
because
sorry.
you did a job.
I
of
didn't
categories.
understand because yes, it's a job of categories, while one of the big problems of Arabic literature is to not have like categories more than like novel, I mean, to have a
No,
different.
no, it's okay, but
So you're right, should we consider that Marcia's papers are kind of basis of our classification of the.
Yeah, to be useful, because I think that this is very, very important contribution of LEILA, that you give the very simple but very straight and rigorous information, because if not, you go to the academical ocean, but you have the opportunity to give another kind of information, more useful that Elizabeth said, more organized, I think it's very good.
So all of this would be manually curated. That means that like, what I mean by that is Malch's article with a list of 15 books, and that would be the job of the person who was entering that data to say, okay, this is a book title, so I'm going to select it, I'm going to add a link, and I will link it to the book in the catalogue.
For now, she did it in her PDF, the links are there, but if you copy paste, I don't know anything about it.
On the website, you have to have someone embedding the.
Exactly, so you have to embed the link manually, because we don't know at the moment if that book even exists in the catalogue. So the work would be to manage that. And the same way in the other way, so if we're talking about, there's a book in the catalogue, which also happens to appear in one of the articles, then we can't like magically detect, because there's all the problems of like even the title might be difficult or something.
Yes.
So the job of this manual content curator person would be to add, okay, this book appears in our selection, and then to add a link to the selection from the book as well.
I think Garth, since yesterday, I mean, this matter was raised up more than 2 or 3 times, that there has to be someone, this person.
Exactly.
Doing it.
So,
Now the final discussion, so maybe we just finish with Colleen on the 5 minutes to do this transition to these big questions.
Yes, I might actually, I meant to say that you're repeating, I meant to say that it's important.
And that's what you said, it was crucial, so we'll finish on this, you know what I mean? Because it makes me think, what is the notice of the paper, what is the notice of the title,
Yes,
What about,
yes.
why there is a kind of selection at the end of the article?
I
This
think we may have
selection,
asked her at the end, it would be great to have tools to explore further.
and what's the reference from this
You're right, it's a question, and Leila, you're right,
The problem
it's a
is
question.
You said it's always answering if there is a.
Because Arabic
There
is
is
something
an-
and Leila is something, you're right.
There is
You're right.
something, I do a bibliography.
Yeah.
You have to translate this and this, and then I go to the catalog, and these books are not in the catalog of LEILA.
You're right, we have to wrap it up with
Yeah.
Marcia to make a correspondence, like in the recommendations, etc. Definitely, yes.
This is essential, This is
Yes.
essential.
Yes.
If not, you don't trust.
Yes.
Really, I think.
Yes, you're right.
Maybe we're very tough, but it's true. Sorry, because
Yes.
this is the
No, and also we have a
pictures.
description of Marshall articles to place them in which framework, like this is commissioned by Marshalling to the other of the blog Arabic, etc. Yes, we have to be very clear all the time. Yes. Yes.
Do we want to finish?
The catalog is legit.
Yes, you're right.
Who wants to finish on that? For your passion, So basically, very short, we just selected 3 websites about national literatures, because we thought they were like nice and you know, they could give us ideas. That one is from the Book Institute of Holland, and the idea was just, you know, to have a look at how they're like divided their websites. Basically, you have a news section, you have the grants, the book market, insights about the book market, the catalogue, so college literature, the initiatives, which is more of yeah, like it's a bit similar to the news, but it's like more like long-term initiatives, and eventually the complex section. And the East Cap,
It's selling books online. This we want to.
Yeah, which is not something that's in the that would be nice section, I guess. Then there's the Dutch book platform, and like the most interesting feature is how they integrated the blogs. So you can see that like you have a featured blog on the right, and then you have more web blogs, and I assume that they actually change depending on the contents of the blogs. So then you've got other ideas of examples here. And eventually, Books from Norway, again, what's interesting was like the different sections. So books, authors, translators, which is not the case of the Polish one, right holders, grants, and about. So this is more about like, this is more a resource platform, and it's a very like practical one. Perhaps the other is more about what's going on. It's also like kind of a cultural agenda about like publishing in Poland. So yeah, just to give you ideas, did you want to say something?
No, just if you go back to the Dutch one, I think also it's interesting because the approach both all on top of the page, the English, yes, here, like it's much more. There are many, like, there are more categories and it's more detailed. So I think we have to make a choice if you see everything that we want to do in the categories, or if we have more mysterious names like resources, blah, blah, and then it's the subcategories that you go in. I mean, this was to really have a transition to what are the big sections and what do we want to.
And this one seems to be made more for mobile. I mean, I don't know. Just weird that it's very narrow.
The Norwegian one seems to be closer to perhaps what LEILA 1 could move towards, which is very kind of practical, right? It's very tool-based, the books from Norway.
Except what the fact that it starts on all books with book covers.
Oh gosh, no, I just meant
the sections.
Yes. Up top, it gets very complicated below. I was just looking at the top part. It is.
But they have a lot of books. They have about 20 books per page, and they have more than
Also,
one
I think it was because of the categories that I saw.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
So should we use that as a pretty good transition to the website? Do you want to take, no, I know the coffee break is not on until sometimes they have to wait. But basically, I guess we can smoothly ease our way into.
I mean, we've got 2 hours left.
Yeah.
So if you like, we could, I can talk a little bit about, like, I'll be making notes as we go.
Yeah.
So I could give an initial like presentation of what I've taken out of the discussions of the past 2 days.
Okay.
And then maybe the
Can
first
we do
half.
the coffee break?
Yeah.
Okay, after the.
Maybe the first hour, the first 45 minutes, I can go through what I've noted, and then we can just see where there's agreement, and then we can say, okay, we're in agreement that this section is okay, this section is like that. Then we have it, and then I'll also make notes about things where there's more discussion needed, and then after the coffee break, we can come back and we can really focus on any issues where there's still some uncertainty about exactly like what we want to do. Does that make sense?
Okay.
Cool. Okay. So
Is it me or it's like very stuffy and hot?
It's very
Just open the door.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, nice to get so I can see everyone.
It's happening now. I came in and I did
Give me your number. I just noted that.
I need to see the first website, the URL for the first website. Yeah.
It looks like when smoke and all that.
Okay, we're having a break.
And then we crash them in without a break, and we have 10 minutes, and then we attack. Ça va?
Avant, j'étais en 2019, c'est un peu ça qui m'a emmené ici en fait, c'est que je me trouve j'avais un différent d'expérience.
C'est très intéressant de voir les autres. Oui, ça, ouais, c'est ça. Ouais, c'est ça, ça donne des. Là, pour l'instant, on est quand même très dans l'abstrait. Donc, pouvoir les rentrer en fait concrètement, ça ressemble à ça. Donc, le programme, c'est basé sur, par exemple, le norvégien ou le polonais, et puis on dit voilà, avec la fois ça pourrait ressembler.
They come we know the person, we know her. It's alcoholic, they're always the same.
Et là, c'est parfait. Et du coup, c'est un peu aussi parce que maintenant, quand on vient à Paris, oui, tu profites de Paris. Pas de des mauvaises conditions. Ciao, ciao. We're having a coffee right now. Okay. We're just having an organic.
Yeah, I know. I was like, so stuff. They were like, boom.
Oui, comme ça, on reste en contact. Parce que je te suis sur Instagram. Ah, c'est vrai? Ah, c'est trop sympa. Moi, en fait, je suis quand lycée, les connus m'ont dit Lucien, est-ce que tu vas faire? J'allais voir. Ah, c'est sympa. Mais tu sais, Instagram, c'est vraiment, je vais plus sur Facebook, même si je raconte plein de choses dans mon marin, parce que pas pour dessus encore. Je vais plus sur Facebook. Et Instagram, c'est un peu mes vacances où je ne regarde que des trucs d'animaux et de nature et de maison. C'est moi aussi. J'ai dit, ouais, c'est ça. De rien, mais je pense qu'on se rend compte. Ah! New lines. It's new. New lines is new. Yeah, lots of political articles, but they're trying to have more cultural articles. So since I write culture, and I'm starting to work on a long article, but I don't have very much time. It's long. Yeah, they give you like 2,000 words, which is a lot for the press. But I pitched something to them about stolen art for the art world in European museums. So this is going to be lots of research, and they want it by September. And so I'm working all summer basically because I'm doing other stuff. But do you want me to give you the name of the
It's okay to reproduce stuff as long as it comes from new ones, no? You want me to give you the name of the editor?
Yeah, okay, because I mean, for your article.
You didn't send me your
I'm
contact, or are you on WhatsApp? Puedes hablar en español, ¿no? C'est mieux pour moi. Y yo voy a vivir no menos del 50%, pero como 30% de mi tiempo en Barcelona. Mi marido es libanés y en Barcelona la tuve encontrado una ciudad como Beirut, pero sin problemas. Bueno, hay independentistas, pero he doesn't care about them. Y entonces tenemos un pequeño piso en Barcelona, en Gracia, y un pequeño piso aquí porque nuestros niños son grandes. Y
esperando eso, pero para ir
sí.
Al mundo.
Sí.
Sí, yo volví aquí con mis hijos de niños.
Sí.
Sí. La madre dijo,
¿y dónde vives?
yo viví en Madrid, me mudaba. Sí,
¿Está estudiando? No. Me voy. Trabaja. Sí, claro. Yo tengo un hijo en así, sí. ¿Y habla bien el inglés? ¿Inglés?
Yo cuando volvemos a España y se habla de volvemos a España, estudiando sin nada bien.
¿Y tú por qué has ido en el modo árabe? Uy, pero la cosa que...
Yo estudié en
¿En Madrid? Y siempre estás enamorado.
A mí, yo ahora es la primera vez que tenía 17 años que estaba más de un año sin ir juntos con 3 o 4 meses.
Y hay luego un sitio en el mundo árabe que prefieres.
Como aquí, no como aquí, es bueno, digo, mira, anda, que haya más diseño de mierda, lo que pasa ahí
How did you fall in love with the Arab world? What was the spark? ¿Cómo se dice spark?
La chispa.
La chispa.
Yo cuando tenía 10 años, sí, mis padres fueron a vivir al norte de Arache, donde aprendí una que se llama la joya del alma.
¿Con qué trabajaban?
Sí, por el Ministerio de Educación y Exteriores.
Ah, ok. Entonces es el mismo círculo que Sandra Mauna.
Sí, pues los padres Ana,
Sí,
que a
sí,
Sandra,
sí,
claro.
sí,
Luego lo diferente, claro, el padre sobre todo es de educación.
sí.
Y entonces, luego no, ahora se conoce todo el mundo. En exteriores es muy fácil conocer. Como dice una amiga mía, que digo siempre el día, el café de ruta es una secta internacional, pero no pero también está acostumbrado, o sea, tenía la vuelta. Pero el caso es que llegué allí y y fue a mi comunidad, yo venía de mi pueblo de Extremadura.
Sí, lo que está ayer.
Entonces, de repente, me enamoraban los sonidos, porque estábamos en el colegio español. Y los franceses y los españoles no daban clase de árabe, los marroquíes sí, porque yo luego seguía el instrumento de árabe curricular. Yo pedí que me clase, que haga la clase de árabe. Y el personal.
Pero era un árabe
fiscal o la clase sí, porque ellos luego tenían que incorporarse al instituto normal. Porque no, un niño de 10 años sabe un casa lengua. Yo en vez de puerta de lectura, pues sentaba a su lado una cartilla de niño.
So but you learned when you were a child?
10 years.
Yeah, this is
Pero,
great.
you know, but no, not 1 year. Arabic is
another dimension. Another dimension.
1 year Arabic is not.
No, even, you know, I was like, okay, I introduced.
So it's part of who you are.
Yo me enamoré, me encantó y a mí una historia muy bonita, que de hecho expliqué en una entrevista sobre este tema y ese chico ya el nieto de Adonista está traduciendo.
What am I supposed to send you? Así, the editor. Sí, tengo muchos artículos, pero no todos son nuevos. Sí, son todos culturales.
Sí, pero no hace falta que sean nuevos.
Sí.
Son interesantes. Claro, si son interesantes, claro, la idea es de que vale.
You're a Spanish. I haven't read He drunk from that night. ¿Qué cositas le haces de cultura?
Todo, escribo cosas de cultura y las otras cosas son sobre el mundo de la visión.
Sí.
Entonces son dos cosas. Sí.
Eso, por ejemplo, es un artículo que es como...
Sí, conozco muy bien a ti
y no es demasiado. Uno de estos esenciales.
So what I said about the web
pero no pienso que es online para publishing. De hecho, el ayudo de mi marido que es
So I would get someone and I would say, okay, these are all the info we need and this is how we want them to be.
I think you're right. The problem is this
Yes, that's happening. That we can be like someone from outside. So they have at least a minimum knowledge of book market, what's an agent, what's a translator. Yes. So it's essential because it's a lot of work. It's not just about updating things, it's a lot of work. And it takes
I'm sorry.
Someone who can be like it's not the big work, but it's like artistic aspect and the literary aspect.
Yeah.
But maybe essentially, I don't see this paper thing without.
That's why like.
But you can ask, like you can write to me and say, I'm interested in this, and then I know the articles I wrote, and this.
I think it's just theory.
An American academic who teaches Arabic literature at Georgetown University.
Yes,
And he's also translated. So he translates.
So when I said that you wrote this up, it was because I wanted them to see, because it wasn't something we can work with.
About the American invasion.
So I am the webmaster. So I do a lot of this, and I see a lot of problems that happens because from the beginning, probably was
Spencer,
here. With the other website in Egypt, the general team from the beginning was that we're starting very narrow, but like
no money,
more or
you know
less
how it
everything
goes.
we can add.
And
Then it's short press, the other one, the way one is created from scratch. But the WordPress is so far, it's doing far better than the, I mean, it's even like faster, more responsive.
I'll send you the link because I know you're interested.
It's nice.
Okay, María Dueñas, ¿no? Ahora María was private. And she was living on the market.
I have made a very nice designer doing all the things for us with the calligraphy. This is our thing, the calligraphy in the background. So it's nice to write, it's very simple. I know you have this much in there. And then it's like more.
And they're all here, but also
So I don't know, I was thinking that if we could stick to like a simpler, and then like, there would always be an option for a drop down with some degrees.
Yeah, exactly.
this is very niche.
I sometimes just like over
Ça va. Je fatigue un peu là.
Comme exemple, ouais.
Vas-y, fallait que tu tournes. Tu vois ce qui se passe quand tu vois du rosé.
Let's go.
Est-ce que tu voudrais la boucle chaise?
Okay, the fun part.
I don't feel that very bad.
Okay, so it's the end of the day, everyone's tired, so if everyone, maybe that means everyone can sleep for the next hour and I'll just make some notes. No, seriously.
You again?
So what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk through the sections that I've noted really quickly and just describe what I've understood from the discussion, and if there's things that people think I've missed, then we can discuss them and we can add them and we can discuss about those things where there's still some uncertainty about the exact specifications, if you like. I'll start off with the high-level sections because I want to make sure there's nothing that I have missed in terms of those high-level sections first of all. So we talked about the book catalogue. So the book catalogue will be a list of works that will be added by hand by an editor, and they will include, so they'll have like a title, the author, the subject or the genre, and a photo, potentially like a book cover or something. If you want, you can, or I can just make my notes and then share them at the end.
It's just like super.
Oh yeah, that would be great. Yeah, amazing. Yeah. Perfect.
So just to make sure, are you speaking later about the other selections, or do you propose
Yes.
book catalog?
So I'll,
three types of
what I'll do is I'll go through the very high level topics, and then we'll talk each one. So we have a book catalog, which is this thing. We have the bibliographic section, which is a link to external resources. So the
And maybe share it with share.
You can go to the thing at the top. Yeah. Or you can do, I think you can do like from Apple or it's a Control Plus. Control Plus.
Okay, anyways, I don't, continue, don't.
Okay. So the bibliographic section is what we were talking about. So it's like the Arab hot lists, other links to external resources. LEILA selection, we didn't talk a lot about that. We can come back and.
Okay, but what do you call then the book catalog if you're not speaking about LEILA's selection? What do you call
This is the collection. This is linked to external resources like.
Yes, the second one, but the first one, what did you call?
So the book catalog, like I don't know what the difference is between LEILA selection and the catalog, because we talked about these things at different, like we talked about the book catalog yesterday quite extensively,
yes.
And then we mentioned LEILA selection today. So is this the same thing?
Yes, this is what I tried to explain, but maybe I haven't been clear enough. That finally LEILA selection, if everybody agrees, but this is how we will now orientate our work, would be to have three types of a selection in three types of items, only one with two book catalogs and an author's directory kind of. So the two book catalogs would be the indie selection of titles never translated. That will be a catalog that will be made by the young scene of translators, scouting those with new titles, etc. And this will be one catalog. Another book catalog would be the essentials, so that would target more especially the publishers in countries where very essential titles have never been translated. And then another item in LEILA's selection would be the list of authors. And here we don't have a number, we say somewhere between 50 and 80, something like that. There will be a kind of strong, maybe 12 persons committee to, and this will be authors. And so what we just said outside is that we will work on having a template model of an entry for a title and for an entry for an author. With all the specifications we want to put at every time we speak of a title or we speak of an author.
So the LEILA selection will be a selection of authors.
Threefold.
Titles.
Of titles. It's always titles.
Two will be of titles. Like we will have three featured selections of LEILA. New titles never translated, proposed in a catalog by the young team of translators scouts. Another book catalog that would be an ad hoc committee will see how we do that, but that would be essential titles that have sometimes been forgotten in translation in some European markets. And then another one would be an author's entry, and there would be, it would be like one of the big tasks of LEILA, to have a list of authors where LEILA will be asking the editorial committee, the UR committee, to have a representative proposition of authors that are not yet well known in Europe, etc., and that so that you can do a search by country and what else?
Sorry, when you say catalog, do you mean list?
Okay, I think I wanted to have clarity. No,
because I think there's a confusion with understanding what a what you mean by catalog.
No, I don't mean that. I mean a catalog. I mean that the scouts, translators who would be scouting titles for independent niche publishers such as Zulma, etc., that they would present the titles and and do translation samples with it, etc. So it would be more like a catalog. It won't be just.
But on the website, it's not the same.
I mean, it depends. So the issue is that it seems to me that the. Sorry.
No, I was wondering, are we talking about like a catalog, which is a full selection of LEILA's collection of books, which will have 3 different types of selections?
No,
okay.
no.
So,
We're speaking about, we will link to a lot of selections such as the literary prizes, etc., existing selections.
That's different. That's different.
And then we as LEILA will do 3 kinds of selections. So we'll offer one catalog that will also have a print version, and that will be this indie catalog, and that will have samples of translation, etc., and that will be produced by the collective of translators. Then we will have a catalog, maybe without translation samples, or it will be existing translation samples, and it will be based on titles that are essential, a list of essential titles, but also with a page for each title, not only a list of titles. And I think we should have a similar template for the catalog of the every title page would have a similar template.
If we go back to like the basics, there will be books on this website, and each book will have a page, and that page will be the same design globally, whether it's a book that's in the new titles list or whether it's a book in the essentials list.
Yes.
And it's possible that some of these books could appear in several lists, so they could also appear in LEILA selection.
No, these are LEILA selections. Sorry.
I thought you said that LEILA selection was something different. LEILA selection was a section of authors.
This is the third item. LEILA selection is because we will pay the translators to come up with a scouting catalog of titles. We will pay an editorial committee to come up with a list of authors, and we'll pay another editorial committee to come up with a list of essentials that will be titles. So it's 3 items, 2 times title items, books, and 1 time authors.
Okay, and for the books, let's say that there are 3 essentials by the same author. There will also be an author page for that author, so Mahmoud Darwish or something. There may be 3 titles from the same author, and then on each of those book pages, it'll say the name of the author, and then you'll be able to click on the author to go to the...
This is a real question. Should we also prepare pages for the authors of the list of essential books?
I have a question here. So the authors list that we are making, like why make it if there are no books by these authors in any of the 2 other lists? And if there are books by these authors in this list, then this is not a 3rd branch. It's just the authors that we are creating. Like when we do the entry, we have a page for every author. So like it's there. It's not a 3rd thing that we have to commission someone to do. No?
You mean that the essentials and the authors?
I mean, we have 2 lists. We have the translator selections and we have the essentials list. Yeah? The translator selection?
Yeah, but the translator selection is something where, since it's, I'm lost now, sorry.
Okay, we have, you said 3 things. You said we have the first one that is like by the new scene of translators.
Yes.
And then there is the essential list with like the things that we can't not translate.
Yes.
And there is a 3rd thing that is a list of authors.
Yes.
Okay, but these authors, aren't they already included here or here?
I think not here, but at least here, yes.
Okay, so then in this case, it shouldn't be a 3rd branch. It should be like the authors that are on LEILA's page, which are mentioned here or there.
No, because we want to feature more authors than those on the essential list and those on the...
If we're not representing their books in the catalog, why do we have to mention them now? I mean,
because it's another way of catalog, and it's also part of like a selection.
But if you're not showing one of their work, me as an agent, I wouldn't be interested just because I see like a picture of the author and how important he is. I want to know his books. So if you don't have it,
note on the author's page, there would be a list of their books, and when the book is in another list, you can click on it and go to the books. To the book notice. That we want to produce one notice for each of the books an author has written.
So I think in general, there's there are books that appear in the new titles list. There are books that appear in the essentials list.
Yes.
Each of these books has an author, and you can access the author page from that book page. So like Mahmoud Darwish, you can click on his name and go to the list of all his books if you want. This is
yes, this is a real question. Should we produce one author's page for all of the entries of the titles catalog?
So the discussion yesterday about the whole idea about having to like normalize the name and like how do you spell Muhammad,
yes,
and do we use the external catalog, all those sort of things. If we don't have a page for the authors, then all that just disappears. We don't need that discussion. But we spent a lot of time yesterday saying that
page on the authors.
We do have a page on the authors.
Yes,
I think that the essential is books or
I think so.
Yes.
Books or
authors.
Les auteurs ou bien un livre.
but I think the two approaches are important. What you're asking as a question now makes me think that maybe we should also produce one author's page for all the authors that appear in the two title selections,
Exactly.
but not vice versa. Like for the author selection, we won't produce for each of the books they have written the notice of each book.
Yes.
We will just link to the books that are in the selections. You know what I mean?
So
We will highlight
so
the one that
the issue is that for me a book is a book, and it doesn't matter whether whether it's in, and that's a very global sweeping generalization, but I'm going to get hated by everyone for this. It doesn't matter whether it's in the new titles section or if it's in the essential section, because maybe it could be in both. It's like there's a new title that comes out and it's like groundbreaking, so it's a new title, but it's also essential. Maybe.
But this is what we say. For us, I think it's really different, the essentials, because it's also a book that has, I don't know, maybe the Jacobean building has not been translated into all European languages. It's an essential, but it will never be a scouted book as like discovered new voice. You know what I mean? The essentials are not.
It's more like
the
a
new
must-have.
What I mean is, in theory, that could happen. So what I don't want, like the whole discussion about trying to keep things simple, I'm trying to like distill the essence of how this would work. And what I'm worried about is that in 2 weeks' time, the new title section will evolve into something completely different, and the essential selection will be something completely different. And then we have two databases because we need different information of those. So I'm just trying to understand if these are, from a kind of conceptual point of view, if they are the same thing.
No, because I also think that the essentials can, because the new titles, how did you call it? The new titles, the indies list, this list would be for titles that have never been translated yet. So it would take years before you can say this is an essential. You know what I mean? The essentials.
Is this the LEILA title selection?
All of them are LEILA, the others as well. The three items are. LEILA is giving the publishers a list for indie, a list of essential, and a list of authors. So it's all like LEILA.
I have an input here. Me as an agent going to the website, I click on books, I see the catalog. Do I see 3 different tags for this is indie, this is essential, this is I don't know what, or do I see all the books and then inside I can see a note saying that this has never been translated, or this was like a sign. We would put a star on the books chosen by indie people, and
it's too confusing to see all the books.
The idea is we show on the catalog the new entries that we think that the translators think they want to translate them.
Yes.
So this is the work.
Okay.
But there is a kind of archive with what has been translated in some language and what we think is important to have in all the languages. So it's a kind of archive.
I don't think it.
So the issue for me is that we're also talking about, for example, Marsh's article, which has links to maybe 15 books. Maybe some of these books are neither new titles or essentials. They're like great works, but they're not in one of those 2 lists. So do we have a book page for that book or not?
No, I think Marcia's article, we would link to the link that she offered to make, like wherever it is that she put a link to. And if it happens that it overlaps with titles she's quoting, then it would send to our.
So next question. So what do you see as the difference between a page for a book that's in the new title section and a page for a book that's in the essentials section?
I don't think so, only maybe on the translations.
So there's the only difference is that one of them will say, this book is an essential, somewhere in the menu maybe, and then that book will have a list of the different translations, potentially.
Maybe, but this will be up to the translators doing the new title thing. Maybe they will do a kind of classification of coup de cœur or something about the number of translators who, I don't know yet, but maybe they will add functionalities to their catalog in their own brainstorming and all that, that won't be on the essentials. Maybe it will be.
Okay, but all that will be done manually by the content curator. The content curator
Yes,
will,
I think so.
okay.
But I think that for the translators list, we will speak maybe about 30 titles, maybe more, but maybe it would be.
But apart from that, a page for a book in the new title section and a page for a book in the essentials section will be identical, apart from the fact that we will show that one is in one month.
I think so. You're looking at me.
There are two comments from the left side of the room.
And I think Samar wanted to say something, but that's.
I don't realize how mapping, structuring the website with those categories would not be a way to fix it and to make it static. Or as a publisher, what I need to know is what's new, and to be reminded, oh, this is not new, but this is still important or still actual or still needs to be retranslated or and I don't feel in this structuration how the website could move with time, how we can be in the living live advocacy, which is
because we didn't because we didn't mention the news feeds of the website that is also in the, there will be also a news feed and a blog kind of approach to also speak about other titles making it right now, but also on temporality, we're not speaking about such a long amount of time because the whole LEILA project will be ended at the end of 2023. So we will experiment this, you know, the time that the translators will do their selection, maybe some of the titles they're teaching will already be translated or published by one of them, but there is not a long time, like 2022 we finish the selection and 2023 we promote it.
So, if you want, we work together. Would it be possible to hear full proposal at email and to say nobody interfere.
Okay.
And we interfere after.
Okay.
Because
but we didn't interrupt him. Gareth was asking.
Okay.
You know, but
don't ask you.
No questions.
Not ask anybody.
So I decided.
Make your full presentation.
Okay.
And after we will say.
Perfect. So if maybe everyone can note questions as we go.
Of course, we know the questions.
Perfect. Okay. So we're talking about the different sections, the catalog type sections of the website, which are talking specifically about books that have a page for that book. So there would be a new titles section, which would link to individual book pages that are decided to be part of the new titles catalog. And then there would also be the essentials selection, which would be a book catalog of essentials books with links to the page for that essential book. And both pages would be similar, apart from the fact that in the essentials, there would be extra bibliographical information about various publications. And then the LEILA selection catalog, which would be a catalog or a list of author pages. What I was trying to kind of distill was the fact that all these three sections, they have books and authors, and in the new titles and the essentials, we link directly to the books, but then there's also a link back to the author page. Whereas in the LEILA selection page, we have a list of authors, and on the author pages, there's a link to the books from that author.
So it's.
No, there is only like there is the book they have written, and if it's also in the catalog, there is a link to the.
Exactly. So
we
the,
want to
so
create
the,
all
yes.
the book.
We will, yes, but basically, it's a catalogue of books, and it just so happens that in the LEILA selection part, we link to the author page, and if that author has a book in the catalogue, then we will also link to that book that exists on the catalogue.
Would it be helpful if we tried to imagine the page?
I mean, I can.
Like if we.
Can we draw?
Yeah, exactly. Like if we were
I mean,
to.
the thing is, I can try and build a wireframe.
Like it would be the page that we would go on to if we get to LEILA website.
I can try and build a really quickly, like a. I might be setting myself a failure, but we'll see what happens. Yeah, I am. Do we have another browser?
It's more than 90 people. Too much for the computer.
We have another browser anywhere? Chrome.
Now you're full in the Google.
Oh,
it's someone else's.
I can just
We won't.
First keyboard.
Perfect. Is the LEILA name taken? Have you looked to see?
Yes, of course it's taken, and we didn't even try to have a discussion about how to call the website.
I mean, you might want to buy the domain.
But LEILA is taken.
That's something else.
You have to call it LEILA something.
Yeah, LEILA books.
LEILA project.
But LEILA books is also taken in, I don't know if you know the guy. He has LEILA books, but he has LEILA books.com, and he has a. So it's really difficult.
LEILA's project.
No, not possible.
I got too many bizarre characters in my password.
LEILA selections, maybe?
Never mind that.
I don't know.
I think I've got an idea, like that's good. In the bibliographical section, so we talked about various different book lists, reading lists that exist on the web. This is just a section where we will have like a title that will say the Arabic literature hot list 100, top 100 or something, a description of what it's about, and then a link to that page. And there will be as many different sections as we wanted out of that. Okay. So LEILA selection is what we already talked about. It's the book catalog. That's good. We didn't really talk about the news feed, but it sounds like it's some kind of blog type content where someone will be writing an article about any particular subject. It could be like a book fair. It could be a new title. It could be like some event in the literary world. But it would be the same thing. It would be a title with a description, maybe a photo, maybe a link to some external resource. But there's nothing different about that apart from just a generic kind of blog.
Yes, and we didn't reflect it, so we'll have to reflect it later. I think it's important, but it doesn't have to make double use with the newsletter, because we also decided that having a newsletter is good. So the news feed and the news, I mean, it has to have.
It's basically curated content that will be created by someone, and there may be links to the books in the book catalog, but that will be done manually. So someone would say, and click on this link to see the book in our essentials list catalog, and then you could click on that link, but it would all be done manually as a. Okay, perfect. Like we talked a lot about a translation database of translators, and I hear people saying, oh, that will be in the translation database, or if this book doesn't exist in Polish, then maybe you could
look in the translation database to find a translator. We didn't talk about any of that, so I'm assuming that's all.
I don't know if you agree, but I have the impression that be it the database of translators that we would recommend to a publisher contacting LEILA, etc., this database of expert persons, etc., or be the database about all the books that have been translated into European languages, I think we ended up saying that it's of no use to publish it on the platform, but that it's like a working tool for ourselves. No? Or do you think that the publishers would be interested in having, and also this was a LEILA 2 idea, and I could have. So, or do you think that this translation database, a list of everything that has been published to European languages, makes really much sense to a scouting, to a prospective publisher? Or not? Because it's a huge work.
No, that's the point. I think.
And is it so useful?
I mean, for the website, I think. If you say that is only in this LEILA 1 project for publishers that want to maybe publish something, you have to quote, and having a whole 2,000 books or 20,000 books, it doesn't make sense, and it doesn't make sense if you don't have it in a proper searching machine. If it's just a file, it's useless, and it only makes more noise. So
and also publishers interested, then what we commissioned and will have are these studies such as the one that Richard produced, and those we will have somewhere on the website. So on 10 European countries, we'll have a mix of analyses and list of translated works.
You know how they do in the tarjama? You can write the author, okay? And after you can see the books of this author. And after you can see the first part of you can click is which books are translated, okay? If there are some. And the other is the information about the person who translates this. Okay. And the link goes to the different books from the same translator. And also the link for the article, the critical article about this translation. Okay. Because you have reseñas. Yes. And you can check it, it's already done.
Yeah, but this is an advanced search, and this is something.
Yes, I don't think we need this advanced.
Yeah.
I know,
well,
but
maybe.
Sorry, just keep going because I missed exactly what you were saying about like the advanced search and the fact of having links to the translators. Is that what you're saying?
The different translation of this translator.
So we're talking now about a page for a translator. So at the same.
No, I'll show you during their speaking if you want.
Okay.
No, but I mean, my point is, well, if you move on, or should I?
move on to the website.
You can just, but you have to continue.
Sí.
Okay.
No, but that's
Base de datos bibliográfica de traducciones.
Okay.
Then you can choose.
It's an advanced search.
So it's like an advanced search for a translator.
Yeah,
but
you can
need that.
I think
you
that's.
don't need, but you can, do this list.
Yeah.
In this way, because you
I
have
think
information.
that's like a version 2 feature because it's.
Yes, we're not in an advanced search
Okay.
also because we're.
So at the moment, what the translation database will be an offline document, but it's managed by the LEILA team, and anyone who's looking for a translator for Polish or whatever would contact you, and you would give them the information separately.
Yes, exactly. I mean, I think we try to have it by hand, all the lists that exist, so that even when we do by hand the catalog, we can say this has been translated into this, that language. Yes.
So then I've got the other resources section, and I'm not sure exactly what. So we've talked a lot about other resources, and we've talked about the list of translations, so the database of like French translations, the database of German translations, the database of Spanish translations, Italian translations. In general, these are all Excel documents or maybe PDF documents or something, but if I understand correctly, this section is a section where the team can upload a document to the website, and then they would create a page and say, this, okay.
I think we just say that will not be in the web page. Like this full list of thousands of books of Excel.
It's not there. Okay. So what we're saying is that information about translations will be added manually to each book page, so that if we have a book that's in the essentials list and it's been translated into Spanish, Italian, German, and French, then the editorial team, the curation team, will add that information manually to each book.
I think so.
Okay.
Yes.
Yes.
Because the idea is to start from the book.
Yeah.
If we have the book, when you go to the book, you have all the information you need.
Everyone seems to agree on that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yay.
We're moving forward.
We're gonna finish early.
No, I'm sorry, no. I don't. It's just that I think the information about the translated books into any language is important and is relevant to LEILA. I don't know how, and if we don't have a database in our website with all the translated titles into their respective languages, we should have, like we have links to the selections of other organisms, we should put the links to the lists of titles translated into each language, the lists available. But it should be an information that you can get to through LEILA's website because it's relevant.
So you think it's relevant to, even if we keep it for LEILA 2, it's relevant to feature on the website a translation database for all the translations into European languages?
Yes, either on our website or to have a page, an onglet with the links to the different lists. I don't insist that they should be on our website, but to access them should be possible through our website because they're relevant to our subject.
I think we discussed this morning, and the position that was quasi-unanimous is the one that Samar expressed.
And the information is available.
That information have to be available, and that as far as possible, all information that we have between different Excel or data, everything has to be placed and saying this is the list for this country, and these have been established from 2002 to etc. And after you can prefigure the global data system that you want, but that's true that this global data system with the big problem that you have to solve, you will not do this in 1 or 2 years. It will take time. So you can make the prefiguration if you want, but what is important is not to just to add a new UNESCO database on translation, because this is the way. If you say we will open the global database that will give all the information, that means that in 2 years the LEILA project will be failed, and that you will find on internet the global LEILA project database on etc., and you will find a database like the one of UNESCO that you cannot use at all. So I thought that this morning when we was discussing, we was expressing exactly what Samar have said right now, is to say we have partial database. The first step is to put this database on our website like documents, and after, when you have time, try to enter progressively things. But this database, you have to give all information very precise, saying this has been established by Richard Jacquemont.
Yes, but I thought I think it's interesting because I thought that this morning we said that sometimes the publishers aren't interested to have this. But me too, I think it's important, and we also have like the updated studies that we commissioned for the analyst thing, so we'll have a nice way to.
Yes, and also you have the confiance because Elisabetta told yesterday, I will not sign because I have an academical course. I will not sign or trust wherever. It's not like, you have the people that we can really avalar, the information and the selection. No, if Elisabetta say yes, okay, recommend, it's okay. But this is I think so, I don't know.
So we would there would be a resources section, which would be a link to a page which would describe the document, and the document would be attached to that page, and then people could download the documents on the page. Whether that's
or a kind of section like a translation, the state of translation in Europe and reception. You know what I mean? Like one section that is for this question of reception and translation for.
Two different things here, I think, if I understand correctly. There are documents which might be PDFs or might be Excel files or might be Word documents, and that are provided from an external source, so chaîre or whatever it is. And there's also pages which are there's also pages which are what I think we call LEILA content, so information about the book markets, external research.
Yes, this is all the things that we didn't have time. It was in the program of this morning, like except the bibliographic selections and the databases or lists of works translated from Arabic in Europe. Then we had like all the other resources to be linked, and it was like the question I asked earlier also, like what kind of information to put on the Arab book markets, on the Arab publishers. Should we link to the Arab book fairs? Should we link to some publishers' websites in the Arab region, which we already said no, because some don't have a website, and also it's not what we do to promote like main publishers, etc. But it was all these questions about how to put some useful information for you. And this can also be done with the PDF, who sometimes I don't know if there is the equivalent of the PDF in the DEF, the Bureau International de l'Édition Française. Laurence was here yesterday, who didn't come back. And they do sometimes like country studies, they do fellowships of French publishers to do a business meeting in this or that book fair or capital, etc. So they also have some information they did on some Arab countries, and they want to produce more. So we think it should be of interest to the publishers to have information on the
we have the
markets.
same, in Spain, we have the house of translator.
House of?
La casa del traductor.
Translators. And they also have information on the.
And they are demanding about Arab because they have another.
Okay.
Yeah.
So yes, we will have a section on the Arab book market, but we didn't have time to share and to map the resources available.
It's basically in the same way that the news feed is an article which was written by someone from the editorial team.
Yes.
There will be static pages that are linked as a type of like a hierarchy of information. So information about the book market in general, and then maybe an article about I don't know, like how to find a translator, how to specificities of the French book market, whatever, but it might be in categories or something, but it's just a section of reference information.
External information, yes, I think, yes.
It could be, but it's probably going to be articles that are written either from an external source, but are hosted on the LEILA website, right?
Yes, here we also had the question with Olivia that, for instance, Publishing Perspectives do have a collection of articles discussing the Arab book markets.
But you could link to them. I mean,
yes, but how can you link to this content? This is again about the search tool. Can it research?
It has to be an agreement with that.
So there's that's another question we didn't really talk about is external content, linking to external content. You can't, if the content is external, you can't index that external content unless you have like an RSS feed or something that you integrate into the website. But in general, what would be indexed would be the content of that page. So let's say that there's an external website that talks about the Moroccan book market, and you think it's interesting to focus on this. So you write an article, all the keywords you put, so you can put like the Moroccan book market is in Marrakesh, and there are like these are the famous authors, and all these keywords would show up in your research, but anything on that external website wouldn't show up in the research because it's external. And
except if we would try to have a deal with publishing perspectives, for instance, to have them extract all the
You can link to the article.
Yeah.
Yes.
But that's all.
Yes.
You'll go to their site.
Yes, of course, this is not a problem.
Right.
But you can't index all the content on an external
So we have to
website.
choose amongst all the articles of publishing perspectives dealing with those we think are interesting and to do one by one links to the articles.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is a very important issue about copyright.
Yes.
Okay, we are dealing with authors, we are dealing with text. You can, and we have that, at least in Spain, you cannot even copy the whole article to just saying this is from that.
Yeah.
That's forbidden.
Except if we.
So you need to do a paragraph and then link
maximum
together.
like academic quotation, and that's what we have to review in this new web
But
page.
you can link to a whole.
Yes,
article.
but doing just a link or a small quotation, that's the maximum you can.
Yes,
you
but
can
a
do.
link would be enough if we mediate the resources, etc.
But that's not, I mean, that's
We
not
want to
a proper
reproduce.
article. I don't know if in a sense of an entry in a website, you can quote how you will, for example, you want to say, this is a review about Jordan market of books. And you will put a whole entry in the.
A link.
Yes, a link where.
To the article.
Where, how you put that link?
So just a hyperlink.
Where?
It's in the paragraph.
The paragraph, and you do an entry in a website with just a paragraph.
So I think you would say the Moroccan book market is blah blah blah. Here's a link to an article about it in 1999.
Yeah, you have to explain, you have to explain because under my experience, we have enough about links and information and then.
You have to have a little thing saying
you don't
what it
send
is.
it and you explain what you will find in this article.
This is what we said
Yeah.
from this morning. It's
Yeah.
the same for all the selections and listen, it's a whole mediation.
You have to have a description
Yes,
of the article.
Yes. So we
One
also.
question here. So from what we're saying, we're talking about the tab that is called like resources, like we should be linking in this tab to external resources or sharing materials that should be downloadable in different formats about the Arabic book market or other information that might be appealing to the publishers, yes?
Yes, but I don't think we can call something resources
No, I
and
mean-
go with all under it. I think we can have a guideline, entry that is like our book market as we had on the Polish book.
Okay, I mean, like, I put resources because this is where there is resources, you can name it anything you want, but I mean, this is what we're talking about. But from also what was said, we said that there would be content created or curated by the editorial team in LEILA that would refer to these other things. So you wouldn't be just like putting
A list of. Exactly,
okay.
yes.
So what difference would be between this section of the website and the blog with section? Because you said that you want to have a timeline which is a
The
blog
blog
section.
section, we didn't define it yet. It would be a news feed, either the way our Arabic is doing it, and we first thought of having Marcia doing a monthly feed, but being more about all European languages and not just Arabic and English. Then we also thought of the option of having a critical corpus en VO in original version, and so maybe have one Arab expert curating a column where he would give a word to a different Arab expert every 1 month, so that there would be for once Arabic literature in Arabic, and then it would be translated from Arabic if the person doesn't write it in English, so that we have an echo of what is the debate, actual debate in the Arab book market right now from the Arab side. Like it's not yet defined the newsfeed, but it would be this kind of blog. Also, till yesterday we didn't know that it would be it would also be nice to go to the cultural operators. So we also thought of the cultural operators, and there the blog content would have been more a thing on the agricultural news and events, etc., the cultural agenda, which we said we would leave aside for now. So it's not defined yet, but I think it will be different from mediating links and resources. The blog will have something like on the news.
So my is going to be writing about all different European realities of Arab translated, you say, every month? What do you say?
No, what I'm saying is that we didn't define it yet. We had ideas for the blog feed. We thought maybe Marsha would be a monthly, like what she's already doing, but adapted to LEILA's needs. Or maybe we could discuss and give the floor to the Arab experts to speak about the current debates on books, on book fairs, on censorship, on piracy, you know, like, and have different. And then there's the whole question about the, is it Arab critics and like we have this discussion.
This comes later, but this is the most important thing.
But this is how Gareth put it aside. He said we don't have any technical specific needs for this blog feed. We just need to have the idea of the creation of it. Like what will we feature in
Yes. But you said, I think in order for us to visualize the homepage,
yes,
we need to do the tabs or volonté in French.
Yes.
Because without that, we have no idea where
we are.
Yes,
I mean tabs. Every time I say sections, I mean tabs.
A tab, onglet, voilà. But I mean, so if it's more culture, like, is there going to be a tab on Arab book fairs or book markets? Is there going to be a tab on translation resources? Yeah, I mean, like, I'm just imagining if I'm a European publisher, right, but we already have a lot of tabs. There are too many.
So what I've done here is I've noted like the hierarchy of information on the site. What I'm imagining is, if you like, you've got the homepage. On the homepage, normally there would be some kind of navigation bar,
right.
And on that navigation bar there would be, I think here there's 1, 2, 3 top level sections. So we have a top level section. It wouldn't be called book catalog, but it would be called something like that. And then if you clicked on here, you would maybe get a drop down. And on the drop down, you would have like new titles list and also essentials list. And then you could click on new titles list and it would go to like an index page that would show all the new titles. And then from here, you could click on an individual book to go to the individual book page. Same thing here. So from the home page, in the navigation bar, you click on the book catalog section, you have a drop down to essentials. Same thing. I think from the essentials page to the individual book page. And then the same thing here, they're the selection, but we should go to the authors pages. And then from the authors pages, you could also get to the book pages. So the news feed, same thing. It would go to like a blog type page where you would have the individual articles linked in the list. And then the LEILA content.
What do you call LEILA content?
So it's
like Marsha's articles.
It could be Marsha's articles.
Marsha's articles are an entry, maybe an introduction to.
No, not the studies. The articles, like the articles you said she would be doing on monthly
No,
basis.
this is in the news feed and it's not said that it will be her. No, what I just said about Marsha monthly, it's the offer for the news feed. It's not yet said that. No, but I think LEILA concept, because also you said LEILA selection only for the other pages, while LEILA selection should be the title of the whole tab instead of book catalog section. Like LEILA's selections, and there would be new titles, essentials, authors.
Okay, author services.
What happens with the collection?
No, it's not complicated.
No, it's clear.
It's not complicated if you see.
If you think of it with a drop down.
Yes, if you see it, it would be much easier.
Yeah, we need a whiteboard that you can draw.
I know, I was trying to do it with Figma, but it doesn't.
Yes, bibliographic resources is what we talked about this morning.
Now we have 2 LEILA selections.
Okay, so same thing. So we, I'm trying to think of the name of another tool that I can use because Figma doesn't really work for what I want to show you. I think I'll have to come up with something later because I don't waste time on that now. So when I say LEILA content, it's Marshall's articles, it's articles about the book markets.
Yes, but all these, I think it should be tabs with the kind of content.
Yeah.
For instance, let's say our book market, there will be, no, now we don't have LEILA's content because we didn't commission the study, but maybe LEILA content, like LEILA's featured content would be if we translate our publishers union whole study, then LEILA's featured content would be, we had translated this like groundbreaking study of the Arab Publishers Union, but then other contents would be links to publishing perspectives, articles to Mohamed Janjar's study on the Moroccan book market, to articles that were important, such as those Samar produced, maybe it's a bit outdated now, but with important info on the Arab book market and problematics, etc. Like it would be our selection of contents shedding light on the practices of the book. And then a question that we don't know yet, and we will have Berlin to have the feedback of everyone on that. Should we link to the websites of the Arab book fairs, for instance? I don't know, in the section of the Arab book market. I don't know. Should we link to?
And you talked about prizes yesterday.
This is in the bibliographic resources, I think. That will have the different kind of selections, bits, lists such as the
anonymous. What do you mean by bibliographic?
So the idea of concerning what is the purpose of the website, LEILA, concerning the prizes, the idea is to present the Arab Littéraire Prize as a resource for a presentation in Western languages of selected books. That means that less than our purpose is not to promote Arab books because they have their own means and stuff. But our purpose could be to say, okay, on the Arab booker, if you click here, you will have the 16 notices of the long list, and if you want, you can go to see the 16 notices of last year. Blah, 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 blah. So you have something like 200 presentation of books. So the idea, as far as I understand, of the what we when we want to connect with prices, this is to propose all the text, all the content that they have provided about books. Okay, and so this is the same for me. It's the same kind of resource than what we have presented with the selection of independent publishers, and you can add other
positions.
But isn't it? Shouldn't it be? We have an author. We have a book. This book has been on the short list for the Arab book or for whatever. And so at that moment, when we feature that book in the catalog or in the essentials, don't matter, then we link to this additional information at the Booker Prize or anywhere else. I don't see any point in distracting people by linking them or driving them to prizes here, because our primary aim is to get books publishers and publish it. Okay, so and those are supposed to be the books we suggest. If they publish other books, no problem, it's wonderful. But our purpose is a very focused purpose, and we have to stick to this purpose without distraction. And if a link helps with our purpose, then it should be there at the catalog, at the essentials, at maybe at Masha's articles.
I hear what you're saying, but our whole approach, and it was one of the assumptions in the whole project, is that there is already information out there.
Of
That's
course there
just, so a
There's
French
always-
publisher telling you, I don't know where to look if I want to have an idea about what is produced, what is good, what is there. So our idea is
If they
like
will not have time, they will never do it.
to go to the, if you link them to the short or long list of the Booker Prize, I think they might go. It's not a way of promoting.
Yeah, if
the
they
prize,
have,
but-
if they have already their fish, you know, they caught what they have to catch, and then they try to get more, and then they might end up at one of those Booker Prize lists or whatsoever. But not in general. I mean, in general, it's for publishers, it's even known that there is a Booker Prize, so you can go there anyways.
I'm not sure.
I'm not sure.
Sorry, it is known that there is a Booker Prize, but a lot of the other selections that you mentioned, they are not necessarily known.
Yes.
So making these lists available, we are a party which is suggesting, proposing a selection, but there are other selections which have also their legitimacy. So we are making these other selections also accessible. And our aim is to promote Arabic literature in a vast sense. So not just take what we and our translators think are the best 20 books and that's it. There are other people who make other selections on other criteria and which could be interesting to other publishers. There are also, we talked about the variety of European publishers. So I think having access to different selections gives us a chance to give different publishers a broader spectrum of what they could choose from. So it's not, I don't think it's a bad idea. This is my opinion.
I think that it looks like there are two philosophies of what we're doing. There's one which is, Stefan just said, is more like closer to a classical literary agent, where you are going to promote limited amount of.
And there is a competition also, yeah?
And,
We are in a competition
you're
with the prizes.
you're just promoting those specific books, and that's it. You don't make connections to anything else.
Well, we do this connections, but not as a primary feature, you know? We can make other resources, then you have a link of go there. It's like a friends section, you know?
Yes.
On your personal website. My friends are like this and this.
This is what I wanted to ask you, Gareth, if you're in your architecture. The question is like back to the idea of the Polish website who said like about the Polish book market, about Polish literature. Like, should we have entries like the art book market, art literature, and then inside of each day, LEILA's propositions and existing content, you know what I mean, rather than.
This is I call this like featured content, and it's more like a kind of static resource which you can create with whatever hierarchy you like. So you could call it like Arab book market resources, international resources, translation resources, about us, anything like that. And you can create any kind of hierarchy you want, but it would just be a place where you could put all these things that are more static content. It's more like evergreen kind of encyclopedic type content rather than something dynamic about the book market. It wouldn't, you could always update it, but it wouldn't be like a news feed that would be updated every week or every day. It wouldn't be like the dynamic information about books and lists and things. It would be more like, here's our list of, here's like our encyclopedia of contents that we can create about any subject. And so I put here like featured content section 1, but we can call this like whatever you want. I mean, if you want to, we can brainstorm now for 5 minutes, this sort of thing that might go in here.
Yes, maybe, because I'm not sure I understand what you mean with the featured content.
So we talked
If
about.
I understand well, this here you would put Marcia's commissioned articles about genres in Arabic literature, about the state of each market, about whatever is information that is not news, that is, as you said, encyclopedic. So what we commissioned the Marcia to do would be here, if I understood right.
Studies, that's why we have the studies, that's why we have the sort of more editorial aspect that's like an article about a subject. So If you want to know more about the detective stories, like that's really, or if you want to read Richard's study of the French market, that's very different.
Yes, but then
something that's updated every week.
Yes, but then if there is a lot of different themes that are in the featured content, then they would only go there by chance. You know what I mean? I thought that for the Arab book market, we would, no, I always go the Arab book market where we don't really feature content. Let's say Marcia on the big content on her articles. I think it should be more clear that you will find here an intro to the big genres.
Maybe it's the titling of the section that's important.
Yes.
It's like, the title will never be featured content.
Yeah.
It's going to be, here are the basics, for example, and here are the basics.
But the basics and the mix, in the basics, you meet on the book market and on the creation and, you know what I mean?
It's the position. We started with LEILA selection. All the books is the material of LEILA, produced by LEILA. After the books, we need the articles made by LEILA.
Yes.
And then the resources.
And then maybe the book market's bigger, so you have something which is in featured content, which we need to name something else. We have here are the basics, and then we have in-depth, which is all the book markets. And then one level up, you have bibliographic sources. So it's
what I think is that
it's just I think here the title is confusing, but we need to.
But it's important to have in every book the reference. So because I understand what Stefan was saying, there is a lot of material here. And it's not said that the publisher will go everywhere. But if he chose or he was interested by one book, he has to see in the page of the book that there is an article that goes on this price, that goes on this market, that goes on this genre. It's important the book to go to the other section.
You mean cross-referencing the different sections of the website?
Oh, it's important when you make the page of the book to remember what you have on the website. So
it feels like.
And I think there's an important role to be played by the main page, the home page, which is like a content. You'll have these windows with all the possible contents that are in the different sections. So this should be very attractive, and this would interest the publishers, and they will feel like going and seeing what we're saying about criminal novels in Arabic, or what we're saying about this selection or that prize, or etc. The homepage will be enough to present the variety and the richness of the content.
Yeah, I think that's like we haven't had a chance to talk about design as a question in general here. So that's one of the inputs for the developer is going to be understanding, like basically needing like wireframes, mock-ups, designs, and part of that discussion will be what's featured obviously on the homepage. And so that might be, for example, content filtered by a certain tag. So like you say, like crime novels, we might be tagging certain works with the genre, for example, so like crime novels, and then on the homepage you could filter and you could get a selection of crime novels and a selection of historical fiction and a selection of whatever that subject might be, and then feature those on the homepage. But that's another question. That's a design discussion that's going to happen afterwards.
The only thing that now I think I can at least explain what I don't understand.
Yep.
I don't understand in featured content if this is a mix of information that LEILA is producing, such as Marcia's article, external links that LEILA wants to link to, such as publishing perspectives article on the Arab book market. So I don't understand why don't we go on with the themes more completely, like selection of books, other bibliographies.
It's a section.
On the Arab book market.
These are examples. These are examples. It doesn't matter what the sections are, but it's more that the idea. It's a more kind of like static reference section, if you like, as opposed to, and it's basically to understand the high level, like for example, the navigation menu, because concretely, like these pages are going to be very similar. So like a bibliographic resource page would be very similar, but in terms of the hierarchy, you would want to group these together. So you want to see a page where there's a list of all the bibliographical resources, and then you potentially want to see a list of information about all the book markets, but you wouldn't want these together. You'd want them to be separate sections, so that you could like drill down into a certain section and say, okay, I want to look in the wrong title, but I want to look in the reference section. I want to look in the reference section for articles about classic Arabic fiction, and then in there will be like one of Marshall's articles, for example, or maybe it's a way of organizing the hierarchy to make sure that we haven't missed out a section. But concretely, these pages will be very similar, because it will be a page where the editorial team or the person who's managing the website will be able to write an article about whatever subject. And it could be cutting and pasting an article from Marcia, from a Word document, or it could be writing some content about a certain market or a certain process or a certain.
Is it a tab or isn't it a tab featured content?
A tab.
A tab, an onglet.
Yeah, it could be. Yes. At the moment, it doesn't really matter, because it could be a tab or it could be a sub-tab, but it's a section of the website that you can get to from somewhere. And the exact hierarchy doesn't really matter. I'm trying to make sure that what we have here is a list of the different themes and subjects, make sure there's nothing that's missing. And afterwards, the real organization doesn't matter so much. This isn't fixed in like stone. It's just to make sure that there's nothing that's missing in it. And tomorrow, like, we don't just say, oh, what about the X or the Y? And everyone's like, oh, we totally forgot to talk about that. So I just want to make sure that there's nothing that's missing here.
Translation grounds.
So, yeah.
Translation grounds.
So same thing, it's like,
or I would say more, there would be articles, there would be sites where you can get translation grounds.
Or maybe
So the translation grants, it's just information. So it would be with the resources, not with the featured content. I think.
Yeah, I agree with Jana.
Yeah,
yes,
right.
Yeah, it's not here.
But it's not bibliographic resource.
Well,
it's
not.
You may remove the word bibliographic and keep resources and have two bibliographies and the list of translation.
To be honest,
understood what you.
I don't think it matters too much. What we want to do is just make sure that we've got the big themes, we've got the big sections, and there's nothing that's missing, because the actual hierarchy within this matter, in the same way that I can cut and paste something and move it up a section or down a section, we can do that. We can move something to a different section. But it's just like if all of a sudden we realize that we want information about.
Yes, we did miss one, I think. We missed the whole thing of linking to magazines such as Banipal or to any existing critical corpus such as Arablit as well. You know what I mean? And
so external links.
This is in resources.
Yeah, this is in resources.
Yes, but it's not, as we discussed this morning, it's not a bibliographic resources per se. It's not a list of a literary prize. It's not a selection. It's whole website or whole. And Banipal is
one of those friends, you know.
Yes.
Like that's.
Yes, but I meant also in the way of like initiatives, you know what I mean? Like Banipal, like Fondation El Canard, you know what I mean? It's not the same as to link to bibliographic resources.
So it could be just a single page of like external links, our partners, something like that.
It's a typing issue, it doesn't matter, is that we have a section that's dedicated to external resources, and then these can be bibliographical or prices.
Okay, so it's
it's a typing issue.
kind of fit that you would distinguish for now. It's not the name of the tab.
Yes.
You can change.
But the translation aid is something that comes later.
Okay,
And this is not comparable with like Marsh's website or Price, something else. Yes, exactly.
So, sorry to, excuse me, I'm really sorry, but I'm worried that in the same way that like conversations were had and decisions were made outside, it'd be really great if we can all share this information, because otherwise people will go away and they'll be saying, oh, we mentioned this. So if anyone does have comments, let's share them between the whole group.
I wanted to drop a slight bomb, but I don't think Mr. would like me, but I think knowing the project and the budget and all of this, I think a newsfeed is something that, as Gareth keeps saying, is like it needs editorial curatorial content, like someone who actually puts the news in so that it gets actualized. And I don't think LEILA 1 has the resources to do that. It's my personal
So I think that's.
And I think because we were talking about newsletter and newsfeed, I think we should aim for the less sort of having it less expensive and less relying on someone being always up to date.
And I think that's
to write the newsletter.
It's difficult because yes, at first I wanted to say that, and also when we said the newsletter is very glamorous and this is how agencies today work, etc. I'm not sure that we already have the material in LEILA 1 for
So writing a
newsletter
is easier than doing a news feed.
So
for the news feed, when you say you're not sure we have the resources, this is something we have budget allocated to. You know what I mean? We always thought there would be a part that would be working as a block, and we have iReMMO in the consortium of partners who also with the review Hamish, magazine Hamish, there will be some intersections between Hamish and the newsfeed. So maybe we can decide that it would be either or, and then see what will be easier to handle between a newsfeed and a newsletter.
Yeah, that was my point, is I think because it's a version 1, we should aim for, because we can see we have a lot of things we should aim for.
So the newsfeed for the Facebook page. We've got half an hour.
30 minutes.
25 minutes, 24 minutes. There's 3 things that people have brought up that I just want to focus on, and then we can decide what we might want to talk about. The first one is you mentioned the whole subject of rights. So one very important thing is that we're talking about a lot of external content. So part of this work of research will be just checking that we have the rights to use all these external databases, even the book translation library, images. So like we're going to need to look at the rights for like using images for book covers, even making sure that all that information is freely available, or that we negotiate like rights for those things. That's the first thing that maybe we can discuss. The second thing is talking about designs. So you mentioned like the homepage. And for each of these like tabs, there will need to be a page with content, with curated content, and there'll need to be designs for that. So the next step, like the output of this meeting is this hierarchy, and I'll write up what I understood in the notes I took about each of these sections and like technically what content will be on there. But the next discussion will be what will the featured content look like on each of these pages, and what will the design of these pages be, which is a work of a designer, because someone who can say, okay, visually, we need to put this information or that information, we need photos for this stuff and that. So that's the second question. And the third question, which is brought up several times, is the actual curation of this information. Like, a developer can build this structure, and a developer cannot input the information into there, because you need like market knowledge, you need Arabic knowledge, you need knowledge of so many different things, and because this is a living site, this needs to be continually updated. So some of these sections aren't feasible unless we have that resource to be able to like animate and to build and to curate and to update the information. So that's really important, because if we build this and then
I won't be the one even for the knowledge.
So I guess those are the three kind of important questions now. So I'm not sure if there's anything that's
have another issue. When we were talking this morning about you say the links of the titles that we have to put it manually. I checked one of our websites and we have, I don't remember now, but I knew we did it. We have a glossary that could work the same with the titles and the authors, that automatically, whenever it appears this word, it links it to the description.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there is a way, I can check with our IT guy what was the process, and it's again a WordPress, so it's nothing complicated. But I think that could be very useful for doing things that don't tire too much. So not every time come, I don't know, the city of salt. You have to put the link, no, automatically it will.
It's a possibility, and I think we have to be really careful in the same way we talk about machine learning or something. That's definitely a potential solution, but I don't want anyone to go away thinking like, oh, it's okay, all the links will happen automatically. But
that's the point where I want to finish. I think it's very important that we have in mind what categories we want to do the input of the information. When we think about the book page, we have to have in mind that we will have a space to put the title, a space to put the editor, a space to put the, as you say, in our mind it's easier to think as an Excel sheet, but we have to think very much now. I mean, you always can add another column, but it's better to think now because then it can be links between. You write the author, then even in the Spanish page of the book or the Spanish title of the book can link to the same web page of the author. You know what I mean? Because when the person who have to fill up this book is in Spanish. So we have the categories, not like doing all in a Word document. You know, but because that then in the future will allow you to do this advanced search that for me, in my experience, will be something that you cannot refuse or not think about it. I'm an editor, and then there's another question. When you do the web page of the book, maybe you have to think about some categories: woman, LGTB, migration, tags.
So
but depends of how then the advanced search work. Have to be tags or have to be categories also.
So
like you will have to normally categories and tags too.
The categories, if you like, this is the hierarchy of categories that we have here. If there are, for example, categories for books, then that's something that we can add at the book level. So the categories might be like LGBTQ fiction, crime novels, anything like that. We haven't talked about that, if that would show up in the hierarchy, because
no,
okay.
I don't think so.
But that would show up in the search. So if you were to search for like crime novels, you would get anything that's tagged with.
Because we're speaking about the small amount of books for LEILA 1, you know what I mean? Like in the catalog of 30 titles, you don't need to classify genres.
But you have to think in the future.
Yes, this is what we can use tags now, but not on the hierarchy, make it visible.
So the tags, yeah, exactly. They don't have to be visible, but if you were to tag something crime fiction, then when you do a search, then anything that's tagged with that word will also come as part of the search.
In the back end, there is this page for data entry. We have to agree on which tabs are necessary to be filled in order for the book to appear. In this page, we can have, for instance, the book title, the author, the publisher, description, n'importe quoi, and then we can have the genre. In the genre, we add detective fiction, but then we can have also keywords, and in this we can write all the different tags, so that this doesn't have to show up when we have 100 titles, but when we have 1,000 titles, it will be there, and at the same time, having it in the keywords, even without showing it to the people, if someone wrote detective fiction, it should appear without showing it as an index.
Very Let's see, and simply don't.
Yes,
This is the
but I think
Norway.
this is the Norway, but they have like 1 billion books, so that's why they're showing it.
No, but the text, the categories.
Yes, it's really beautiful. I like the website.
And here I don't know if they have hidden tags.
I think-
I think we forgot to mention the contact form again and where it would be.
What I mean is that within every one of these, you will find a lot of books. But on the LEILA website, maybe like you would say detective fiction and there would be like just one. So it's not worth showing it until we have more.
Just one final question about search, because we didn't talk about this at all. Are we assuming, so basically for each type of category, for each type of content, like you said, there will be ways of adding tags, to tag certain articles with certain tags. There'll be a way of potentially having like a hidden field where you can type free-form text.
Just adding tags, I don't know if you all know everything about tags, but adding tags is in the web redactor, the writer, doing that manually.
Yes.
Suggest.
Keywords. It's a
It
keyword.
doesn't have to be like kind of like
Doesn't have to
hashtags
have a
or something.
hashtag.
It can it's just keywords that relate to that content.
And then he puts as a list before,
Yes.
and then it's
Yes.
a web developer who knows to treat them.
So
when he enters it.
automatically, when as part of the search engine configuration, you would say, okay, when someone does a search in the title and the description and the author and the tags and the hidden text.
Usually the tags are hidden, I guess.
Yes, I mean they can be either, but
Usually they're.
yes,
But can be also what they showed you yesterday in the site of.
like a kind of tag file.
Yes, this morning, the alliance, yes, it can also be there, yes.
Yeah, but I think but that also is useful to make this, because you don't want to show it, you don't need.
Yes. Yeah.
But and you can create as much as you
Yes.
want
But
in the future.
It's also good for indexing for Google, because if you have a list of all these keywords and links to the pages where you would have information about Lebanese fiction or whatever that subject is, then it's a really great way of getting that content indexed into Google as well. The only thing I have to say about search is at the moment we're assuming it's just like a free text field that you type information, you press enter, and the search will happen across the whole site, whether it's book data, author data, curated content. The search engine will find the most relevant content regardless of where it is on the site.
And here's also this question that we had about, can there be a kind of tool that also researches Arab lit sites once Marcia will have reorganized it, etc.?
So we haven't talked at all about how that would be integrated, because
just to update you all, at some time we were almost thinking of like making a common portal or something like that with Arablit. We kind of withdrew from the idea because we're EU-sponsored project. It's very different. It's a different approach. It's a different identity. We cannot have a single entity to a collective being, etc. But still, it's one of the the biggest information sources in English on Arabic literature. So. And she's very open for the data access to her page, to us, etc., etc. So how could this happen?
So at the moment we haven't talked at all about that.
It would need another day.
or we need, because if it's just like indexing the RSS feed from her site, so that if you were to do a search, you could potentially get a link to her site. The issue with that is that it's like you're taking, in the same way that linking to external resources is taking people away from our content. It means that it may be providing great resources, but it's also providing great external resources rather than keeping people on the site. That's an editorial and a commercial decision, if you like. Whether we want to do that, whether we want to.
We like to be mentioned outside and referred to from other websites, not to keep pushing them to other websites, even if it's very.
That's the problem.
Like we want them to come.
We also didn't want to repeat all the things, like we're not for profit, so we also didn't want to repeat all the contents that are already there. And in the country, we wanted to promote what is there and what is good.
But I guess this content isn't found on the LEILA website, so you could also potentially say, why don't we just put like a Google search box, and then people will find the best content wherever it is on the internet. So it's just a
like a product decision about, do we want to try and keep people on the website because we think it's like the best content we found is on the website, or do we want to send people to wherever it is on the internet that they can find that content, knowing that the number of visitors to the website will be less because we're not providing that content, and that's an editorial decision.
It's just in terms of traffic, that we sort of the gateway to other people, not people.
Yes, but if we say that publishers, a lot of times I think about a country, I want to see what is there in Libya or in Yemen. She's right now reorganizing her website exactly with this idea. And for us, it will take us a very long time until we have something substantial when tagging a country name. And she will have a lot of valuable info. So somehow it would be great to.
So on this question of going outside of the website or keeping inside, I think we just have not to forget that if the project go on, the objective is not to have maximum visit on LEILA website. We don't care. If we have 2 million visits of people who are who just want to consult what is published now, this is not a good result. We prefer to have 20 visits, but 20 visits of publishers that will produce 10 projects of translation. So we are very happy of our 20 visits, and we don't care for the 2 million visits. It's really, I think it's very important. And so when we discuss saying when people go outside of the city, is it a problem? Really, this is not, you will not have one publisher who will sit and take his computer and to say, okay, we'll go on LEILA and to see which book I will translate. It won't work like this. We have all many windows open on our computer, so we don't care the people to go out of LEILA website. They are able to go back if they're
yes, but is there a way, for instance, let's say in our loop box, we put a word and then there are the findings on our website, and that there is the option like extend the search to Arabic website. You know, like can we think of something like
yes,
that?
I think so. Yeah. Or maybe the idea is that always by default you will just get the LEILA results. If there's nothing on LEILA website, then we'll propose something from Arablit, so that we'll only show the Arablit links if there's nothing relevant on LEILA
And
website.
this would come with the research results, like there would be some results, and do you want to extend the search to Arablit? Is this an option?
I think it's probably, I mean, I don't know, I know it's a well-known resource, but I'm not sure if everyone going to the LEILA website will know that exists. So that's this button, and they'll be thinking like, what is Arablit? So maybe it's better just to show LEILA results. If there are no LEILA results, then we show Arablit results, so that there's still. We
can decide that.
The system will decide that, yeah.
Because with Marshall, we had this whole discussion because she's exactly in the same approach than Thierry, like having the same objective in the end and all that. So we even thought that she doesn't have a web developer, she's doing everything by hand, she doesn't have subsidies, etc. So we even thought that things she would give her all the rights to also to also dig in her own website, etc.
This is not happening. Okay? Sorry, I mean.
No, not to fold it
it's
into
not.
ours, no, not at all, no, not at all to merge, not at all.
Right.
But even on the search tool, if we can then go to Arabic, as long as we don't have enough info featured, etc., then maybe in exchange of that, we would also have a kind of deal that our web developer would be helping her out with her architecture. You know what I mean? Like she would be, we were imagining kinds of deals because she really doesn't have any problem for free rights to access through a search tool or her website, etc. But on the other hand,
I don't think she wants to give away all her content.
She doesn't want to give it away, but we were thinking about the deal because she has as a problem that she has to reorganize her whole website to make it much more than the blog, you know, like what she explained. And so it could have been a kind of deal. I don't know if this is imaginable or not.
I have something to add to this. If from my experience, if, for instance, we chose to have this website on WordPress, this would mean that, we said it's not a decision that we should make now. But for instance, you said that, he said we shouldn't decide now in the presentation yesterday. Yeah, so if we decide to, you decide to have the website on WordPress, this would mean that the developer, hopefully you, would build us this amazing place, but then you will be able to handle it day by day without the developer doing like day-to-day work, because this is what WordPress is about. You can handle and monitor your website completely by yourself. So if this is the option you're choosing, then there is no possibility for the option of our web developer will be helping you, because our web developer built us this, and then he's in the Maldives, and you're on your own. And of course, you can help her with whatever she's doing, because that's why you had a web developer from the first place.
Okay, and by the way, do you have a diagnostic on the WordPress website?
I think I didn't want us to like focus on the technology, because that would like direct the discussion. And I didn't want us to say, oh, well, you can't do this on WordPress or you can't do that on WordPress. So it's really good that we didn't have that discussion until now. But I think that it makes sense that that's a WordPress site in terms of the hierarchy, in terms of the way that the articles, the structure of the site, the structure of the articles. I think that's the most sensible solution. And there hasn't been anything we've talked about today that I just thought that wouldn't be possible on WordPress. So I think that makes sense. The only question, bémol about that is the question about the translation database, and that would be like V2, but depending on what that looks like and depending on how that's structured, that might be something that's complicated to do in
the database, but the catalog, even if it would grow and become
a
kind of database of books, then it can
So for LEILA 1, you're not going to do the translation base? I'm not clear.
No, but at the same time, what we said is also that we don't want to use WordPress for LEILA 1 and then to look to switch it to a website to develop LEILA 2. So we want to make sure that we start with a tool that is sustainable with
so that's the kind of the bémol about this, is that WordPress does kind of impose a little kind of less flexibility, and so in terms of like the translation or the bibliographical information about the works, there'd have to be some kind of brainstorming from both the product and the technical point of view as to how you would integrate that information and then how you potentially search for it. So that's the only question at the moment for me, is how you want to do that. But we can talk about that another time. There's definitely ways of doing it. I don't see like very clearly an exact solution, but it also depends on the like the requirements.
And the budget.
Yeah. So WordPress is definitely less expensive.
Yes, WordPress, you get now, you get all the management of all this, you get the tools that allows you to build a hierarchy. Honestly, like the most, the biggest part now is talking about design. Yeah. And
so we were good on the objective of simplicity.
Yes, exactly. Yes,
things like that. If this is what we do.
Yeah, I think so. Yes.
Just one point. I don't want to start now the discussion about design, and I have no pertinent idea about design. So my opinion is have nothing to do. But just to point that when you imagine the design and you have to find someone who is creative, never forget, from my point of view, that this is a professional website.
Yeah.
That means we are not, the objective is not to attract the attention or to. Okay, this is a professional website, and I think this has to be reflected in the after. What is, I don't know. But just one point we didn't discuss. I don't want to be paranoid, but I think that when we touch about a question concerning promoting the translation from Arabic region in the Western countries. We are not on a neutral political question. And we know that on this question, you have groups, radical groups, who are also able to act and so perhaps without being paranoid, but perhaps to ask the question of security. Okay, it's good to be open, but take care. We are on a question that it's possible. No, it's not impossible.
Yes, another question also linked to what Thierry is saying about security, etc., and also to what Nada was saying about the fact that we're on our own then with the WordPress website. Is it that if we don't choose a WordPress, but we go for developing our websites, and also you said that you're not so much into WordPress and we would like to be with you. So is it also that it's less expensive to have our website developed by a web developer, etc., if we have such simplicity, and then we have an advantage of having him as the manager, maintainer, etc., on our site?
Whatever happens, I think having a developer as the manager, as the curator is a bad idea, because that will be, first of all, the developer won't have the domain expertise, the information about the market, the language that's necessary, and I think it's like a waste of resources, paying like a developer salary for someone to maintain the website.
It's not less expensive if the website is more simple. This is my question. You know, like if we don't have to develop.
I think it's two different jobs. It's like the developer won't do the designs, and neither will the developer do the curation or the management of the websites. It's
he does the architecture,
yeah.
But doesn't put the curtains in.
Yeah. I mean, I could put some curtains and you'll hate them. You won't really hate them.
Yeah, and I think the issue of the security is it's not about more WordPress, but where you have the server, where you have the website, because we had this issue. We will have several attacks, and so far we managed, but we have a specific personal server with security, and sometimes they need reach.
I mean, I can just very quickly. There's lots of different levels of security. So there's like, what passwords do you choose? So making sure that the site is configured by default to have strong passwords, blocking access to the administration pages so that you can only access them from certain places, or certain, making sure that the rules are enforced so that only certain people have access to certain parts of things. So hosting, making sure that the hosting is on a secure platform. Updates, so making sure that the WordPress software is updated regularly, and that can be automated as well, so that by default now I think WordPress is always configured to automatically update, and you get an email like once every 2 weeks saying, oh, by the way, we just updated the latest version. Like the biggest security risk of WordPress is not keeping it up to date, because there's always security issues that are found. But the only way they're really going to get exploited is if you leave those security issues like open for maybe 6 months or something. And by default, if you keep things up to date, you're pretty sure that there's a very low risk of anything happening.
I want to ask something. Did you say that you hate WordPress? Like, do you see that there anything needed from the LEILA website, or like the LEILA mission, that can't be done or be sustainable with WordPress?
I don't think so. There may be some slight compromises that need to be made, but I don't see anything that's, you know, like if we start with WordPress, I don't see anything where you'll be like, oh no, that's just not possible, like we can't do this. The only question is this question of like the bibliographic information, how we enter that, and I'm pretty sure there's a module you can use to kind of like tag hierarchical information. Again, with the proviso that all this will be entered manually, so that's the curation job.
And is it really like for the administration and all that? I mean, you're recommending 100% WordPress for our needs, because we have a kind of feeling that it's no, I'm saying we, because Sarah just wrote that we don't want the WordPress is like prêt à porter. C'est du bricolage et c'est moche. On a les moyens d'avoir un vrai site. Is this true that we will have something more beautiful and more.
I think it gives you the like. The
I kind of agree that we don't want to go for the cheaper kind of proxy or EU-sponsored project. We can, like, if it's not a huge price difference, and if then we have a better accompanying of our website, if we're with the web developer rather than WordPress, then.
Well, there would be a web developer involved in any case.
Okay.
Whether it's for a WordPress site or Drupal or Joomla or any of these other CMSs or for custom development, it's just a question of like how much that web developer is going to cost, and that doesn't change anything about the fact that whatever solution is chosen, then you still have to have someone who's curating the content, which is the developer.
Yes, of course. Yes, we.
Just one question. Within these options, if you are much independent to propose the content and to.
Exactly. Yes. Exactly.
In both options.
Yes.
It's not that it will be impossible for us to post anything if we are not on
should be equally.
I disagree with what Samar said. I mean, a lot of websites are made with WordPress and mobile.
Exactly. Like
It's just that if you don't know what's behind the website, you cannot satisfy.
Like so, like you can do a search for like the top 10 WordPress websites in the world. You know, like the whitehouse.gov. They got hacked, but
yes, I remember that in our discussion sometimes it took you time to go and try and have a look about is this WordPress.
Yeah, sometimes you can tell because there's like default URLs, so you can type in like wp-admin, and if it's WordPress, you can normally like there'll be a page there.
But I mean that a lot of institutional important websites are WordPress.
Yes, so. and you wouldn't have any idea because it doesn't say like. This is WordPress.
So just and internally it's very easy. So as let's say you can have different profiles. One who is just editing, one another level who is the administrator. I mean, practically, it's very simple and very useful.
I think WordPress has a bad reputation just because it's so many like personal blogs use
user friendly.
Yeah, but it's actually like if there are people who are using it to blog with like a very simple, cheapish interface, this is not all what WordPress can do. I mean, WordPress can create so many as sophisticated, but at the same time, it's like it's very easy to manage for someone who has no idea about like web management.
How should you be with us? Predict excellent word.
So I'm just looking like.
And you also say that you're not a specialist of WordPress, etc., but it could still be an option that you would work with us.
It could be.
Even if it's WordPress.
Honestly, what I'd recommend now for the next step is that I'm going to write this up, like I'm going to update the document that I started. It's probably best if I just do that in English now because
okay, yes,
shared.
yes, no,
I recommend that you send that to a couple of different places and say, like, this is our specification for our website. Give me a quote. And then you've got a budget, and someone might come back and say it's going to be 5,000 euros. Someone might come back, it's going to be 50,000 euros. You get an idea of like the relative cost, and you get an idea of the sort of work that different people have done. And like I say, like I need to look at like what my schedule is over the next 1, 3, 6 months because there's still some uncertainty there.
Okay.
So that will give
so
you
it's depending on your schedule. It's not
exactly.
like it's a WordPress, so it's a no.
No, exactly.
Okay.
So like I don't know what I'm doing in the next 6 months, to be honest. So and whatever decision you make, like I wouldn't recommend that you just tell me to build it. I would recommend that you do some research. And that way you have options. And that way, even in terms of like LEILA, the board.
So we do research on our side, and then we will wait also for you to say about your availability
like,
or about one of your friends.
Even in terms of like the financing, you know, like just showing that you've had a number of options and you weighed those up and you went for like the best value or the most professional quality or something is something that's probably important. Any kind of like tender negotiation kind of situation for contracts.
And the specifications would be not far from enough to go and ask for chiffrage?
Yeah, I think so. Every developer will have a different set of questions depending on what technology they're using, depending on their experience, depending on whether they built like media sites or more kind of promotional sites or institutional sites, that kind of thing. So everyone has a different set of expertise, but because this is a kind of like classical kind of content site, like most developers who've got WordPress experience or something similar should be able to look at this and say, okay, it's going to be this much or like this much time at least.
But maybe even like your website, if you guys have a developer, Christian can ask for a quote
this
from
is
them.
not difficult to find.
Yeah, exactly.
To find several proposals.
Yes, just be working with the right person.
Yes, but the good idea is to ask to the Alliance, ask to PS, ask to them.
No, don't ask them.
Because
So that makes it useless. Well, it's very old fashioned.
Yes, it's old fashioned.
But the idea is that you will have proposals starting at 2000 and
upwards.
So after you have to get your strategy to say which one I choose. Is it the better idea to choose the less, or do you have other criteria? So, but after it's your job.
Okay. And can I ask? Sorry.
No, I was just going to say your website is nice. I mean, it's easy to navigate, which for me is the main thing.
But I have to say, okay, I will. You can be in touch with Laurence, with the dear directress, because myself I don't know who is. I have to tell you.
I have one stupid question, but I have it in my head for the 2 days. When you write a nice introductory paragraph and you link to a website, how do you do that? Because I mean, in an email, when you want to tell someone, go to this website, you put www. But you don't do that on your website. How do you?
In terms of the domain name?
Yes.
It's
and how do you
just need a little bit of code at the beginning
like,
and the end.
You say here, and you have to put the word here.
No, it's always best to
how
go.
do you list of links? You know how.
So it's always best to either use the name of, like, you should never say like, click here to do this. You should, like, just from a kind of editorial point of view, you should say like, here is a list of Arabic publishing resources, and then use the word Arabic publishing resources to describe what you're linking to. And then, you know, you probably can't do it here, but then you just go like click, and then like right click and say like.
But if you want to say this is very price, blah blah blah, and you go like Abu Dhabi, like to the booker.
So I would always recommend like just using a text that describes what the link is going to. So the Abu Dhabi Contemporary Arabic Literature Festival, and just link Abu Dhabi Contemporary Arabic Literature Festival.
You highlight it. And so what you see are paragraphs. It's not paragraphs and then a link. You know, it's not a paragraph saying on this link.
I mean, you can do that.
And then you click on www.
No, you highlight the word that is.
It's to have it like embedded, like a hyperlink,
exactly.
or you can have it.
So what you see usually is a list of paragraphs.
Yeah, and you don't have to think about this now.
That's
no, it's like in an email when you want to tell someone, here you have this, the point, and you put the website.
Oh, you don't link it in your email?
What?
You don't
You can put a hyper, you can embed it in an
You
email.
can embed it in the word file, you know, like when you're writing a
After 2 days, you know where I said something. So I wondered how the page would look like. Here's a link to that. Here's a link to that.
No, it's very simple.
Thank you so much to all of you for We didn't discuss of how to share resources contents between us if it's a mail. You know what I mean? Like if we react
Why don't you create a Google Doc?
A Google Doc?
No? That way everyone can interact on the same document.
Yes.
One Google Doc where
One
people
Google
can
Doc. And you share it with everybody. And everybody can interact.
Everybody can come and tell, here's a new resource, I found that, what I was saying about it.
Yeah.
Okay.
A common mail to uphold the address would be useful.
Also.
A common mail to uphold the address.
Yes,
that's
very useful.
Yes, it's true that we didn't have any before the meeting.
The document Google Drive, like you choose any Google platform.
And you open it to the.
Yes, you share all the emails, and then actually, like, even if you don't send an introduction email for all of us, if you just share us all with the same Google document, I can see it's there.
Yes.
So it would be.
Non.
Est-ce que vous avez fait un grand email ici? Avec ça? Ouais, juste pour.
Bon, en fait, quand je suis collé une adresse.
D'accord. C'est la même chose que sur Word.
C'est ça qui s'appelle embedded.
Oui, c'est la sur Word, c'est bien.
Oui, si, je le fais, mais du coup, oui, pas sur un mot. En fait, à chaque fois, je rends juste le. Je veux dire, je garde
le retour sur le document.
Ah oui, parce que tu veux t'envoyer le document.
Ouais, je peux renvoyer ce que j'ai dit de garder.
Oui. Et en ce mot, et puis, oui, d'accord. C'est ça les liens hypertextes. Moi, je les utilise autrement. Je les utilise comme on peut, se met pas en bleu et sur les clés en bleu. Tu vois, www. Et là, pour être sûr que ça y aille, je vais le chercher. Mais jamais je le mets sur un autre mot que. Oui. Oui, bah non, oui, je vois bien, je vois bien des etc. On n'avait jamais c'est avec ce qui-là. Ah, yes, you have something.
No, but like it will always be HTTP. And then like,
but you can see www.
Yes, but I mean, even when you're embedding the link, it doesn't have to be the link, like you can just write the website of all the yes.
Alors, cette année, alors,
En même temps, je trouve que les tests.